Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel, Tech Prodigy, Make Your Own Wife at the Start. Chapter 101. Wakanda. In the council hall of the palace, a hologram is playing in front of King T'Chaka. For the safety of your country, I now open my private sanctuary to you in good faith in the principle of humanitarian relief. There is no charge at all to help you keep your Vibranium resources, with no upper limit. The activity time is valid within 3 days. If it is outdated, the consequences will be at your own risk. Looking at the holographic image, a handsome young man was sitting on a luxurious sofa with his legs crossed, saying such a paragraph. T'Chaka's face turned green. He has lived for most of his life, and he has seen countless people who are arrogant, but this is the first time he has seen someone who is arrogant and almost lawless. Where did Shenjingbing come from? Did he drink too much fake wine? Or was his brain caught in the door? Standing next to King T'Challa, the heir to the throne, T'Challa said with an equally ashen face. The words of the young man in front of him seem to be normal, but in fact, every sentence reveals the arrogance of a neuropathy. What is Vibranium? It is the lifeblood of their Wakanda, and it is their Wakanda's greatest wealth. 1 gram of ultra-rare metals can be sold for 10,000 United States dollars, which is far more precious than gold. The reason why Wakanda can develop to this point is that it is rich in vibranium veins. This shows how important vibranium is to their Wakanda. It is said that they are the most important strategic reserve materials in their country, and there is no problem at all. But at this moment, the young man in front of him even said that he wanted to help them keep vibranium resources for free, and there was no upper limit. This is not a neuropathy, this statement is simply a joke. It's maddening and funny to let them hear it. Where did the coins come from? After pressing down the hologram in front of him, a trace of unease appeared on King T'Chaka's face. Because the young man in front of him is not an ordinary person, but an existence that makes S.H.I.E.L.D. and the beautiful country's military extremely headache and fearful. Yes, this existence is the new leader of the Rockefeller family, Locke. Although Locke is currently only 14 years old, he is as witty as a demon, and his methods are as ruthless as a butcher. Reliable sources revealed that the slaughter of the Jin and building of the underworld emperor Kim Bing, the murder of Pierce, the minister of the World Security Council, and the murder of Lieutenant General Ross, etc., are all inseparable from the 14-year-old boy. In this way, for this fierce young man, Rao is the king of Wakanda, one of the permanent members of the United Nations, and he cannot help but need extra attention. Father, this guy named Locke is too arrogant. He clearly wants me to hand over vibranium to him. We must not promise him. At this time, Princess Shu Rui on the side said. Although the Rockefeller family's status in the beautiful country is detached, it is also in the beautiful country. What does he think our Wakanda is? A persimmon that he needs at will. Don't pay attention to this kind of deep well ice guy. Let him get it himself if he has the ability. Let's see if we don't blow his head. T'Challa said angrily. Young and energetic, he naturally couldn't get used to this kind of thing happening in front of him. Hearing his son's words, T'Chaka showed a hint of dissatisfaction and reprimanded. This matter is not as simple as you think, this guy is not easy. T'Challa, you're not too young, and in a few years it's time for you to take the throne and become the next king of Wakanda. At this time, you are still so arrogant, how can I give you the throne with confidence? Hearing his father's reprimand, T'Challa immediately lowered his head respectfully and said seriously, Father, I know your painstaking efforts, but this guy is really deceiving. He didn't take our Wakanda seriously at all, and he sent the video so provocatively, it's just outrageous. Although I am the future king of Wakanda, I am also a warrior of Wakanda. Even if I die, we absolutely cannot accept this arrogant and unreasonable request. Hearing T'Challa's impassioned words, T'Challa nodded silently, and he didn't know Locke's real purpose. But having lived most of his life, he was able to see the essence of things more clearly. Locke's video is provocative, yes, but it's also a warning, he's warning them. Could it be that this guy already knows something they don't? What did he mean by the so-called rescue? For their Wakanda crisis, did this boy originally, or did it come from other forces? One question after another filled his mind, making him unable to understand for a while. But one thing is for sure, as his son T'Challa said. Vibranium is the lifeblood of their Wakanda, an important strategic reserve material. Even if they die, there is absolutely no way they will give it up. There is no upper limit, which is ridiculous. Shu Rui, during this period of time, your side has strengthened monitoring, and the level of the national defense energy barrier needs to be reinforced again to prevent any changes. T'Chaka said with a solemn expression. Hearing her father's words, Princess Shu Rui's face showed a touch of disdain. Father, I will do things, but I think it's a bit of a fuss. A small Chable family can't shake us. Not to mention that the defense monitoring I created can detect intruders in an instant, even if they are approaching the national line. There is no need to worry at all. Our energy barrier is strong enough to withstand all kinds of missiles, and unless nuclear bombs are used, it is impossible for them to break through our defenses. And we have deployed a large number of air defense and ground-to-ground weapons at the national line. If he really dares to attack, I will let them go back and forth. Princess Shu Rui said confidently. As the chief scientist of Wakanda Nation, his research ability is no weaker than that of Playboy Tony Stark. In terms of current technology, she even surpasses Tony Stark. Tony Stark is mainly strong in his innovative ability and incredible wisdom. Hearing Princess Shu Rui's words, T'Chaka nodded silently and did not speak. I don't know why, since seeing this hologram, he always has a vague feeling of unease in his heart. It seemed that something terrible was waiting for them. Wakanda General. Is their Wakanda crisis really coming? T'Chaka couldn't help but drummed up in his heart. In Rockefeller Manor, Locke stood quietly by the window of the study, looking at the bleak autumn scenery outside, and felt a burst of peace in his heart. Suddenly a gust of wind blew, the branches swayed, and the leaves flew, which explained to him what it means to be quiet, but the wind is not constant. This seems to be alluding to the real world he is now in, but what he represents is not the tree, but the wind. On the quiet desk, there was his slightly yellowed notebook. Under the strong wind, the notebook rattled and flipped constantly, and finally the page stopped on a schedule. It was written impressively: 3 days later, invade Wakanda. At this moment, the door opened, the yellow skirt swayed, the commander's sister's slender legs stretched out high forks, revealing the black silk on the thighs, and walked to Locke's desk. Quietly closed the rustling notebook and put it on the bookshelf beside the table. Something went out. Turning around slightly, Locke asked with a smile on his face, nodded, his eyes rolled, and his smiling face groaned, and said, "Yes, young master, do you think they will agree?" "Definitely not. They will only think that I am insane, and I am probably already yelling at me." Locke shook his head with a smile, with a playful look on his face. Giggle. Young master, you clearly know that no one else will agree to our request, but you still want to send them a video. Aren't you looking for scolding? I don't know what you think. The commander had a smile on his face, especially when he thought of the video recording for the young master just now. It was even more amusing. The way he spoke, she felt that the young master was seriously ill. Hearing this, Locke also laughed unconsciously, and thought it was quite interesting. However, this video is definitely going to be posted, and out of respect for Wakanda, it is still necessary to say hello to Roar in advance. What if they were forced by their domineering arrogance and agreed to their request? This way, there will be one less war. War is terrible, unless he has to. He really doesn't want it to break out. But when I think of the Battle of New York 7 months later, and the attack of Thanos behind, and the more terrifying Dormammu, he had no choice. He had to get Vibranium. Whether it is the construction of other members of Yoba's troops, or the formation of his humanoid mecha flight, and the outer space base, Vibranium is the material. And only by making his own forces stronger, would he have enough confidence to resist the various challenges that follow. This challenge is not only about himself, but also about the fate of the entire planet. As a member of this planet, he naturally does not want to see his home planet turned into ruins. And Wakanda owns a lot of Vibranium, which is also a threat to them. As the so-called common man is innocent, there are a lot of interstellar forces who have the idea of Vibranium. That's why he deliberately, the king is good, mentioned the idea of saving Wakanda in the video, hoping that the king of T'Chaka could hear the deep meaning of his words and finally cooperate with him. But he also knows that the probability of such a situation is close to zero. But no matter if he can succeed or not, he does it anyway, and the consequences are left to the will of God. With a smile, he walked to the commander's elder sister and gently lifted her chin. Even the commander's sister thinks that I am funny. Young master, it seems that I should teach you a lesson. Locke said with a teasing face. Hearing this, the commander's elder sister smiled slightly, but she picked up the fruit tea on the table and handed it to Lee in front of Locke. Master, the tea is cold, you should drink it first. She turned her back, her slender legs stretched out from the skirt again, and her hands lightly pressed against the desk. Immediately, a capital letter composed of a body was established. Master, today's class, I teach you English, this letter is pronounced as A, do you understand? Still that sentence, the understanding of words, the commander's sister is a must. Understood, Commander, should I write you a capital one now? Giggle, classmate Locke, you are so smart, you already know that you can draw inferences from other facts. That's right, use your I and Maya together to read AI, which is called word creation. As expected of the Dragon Kingdom script, it is really broad and profound. When he was studying in the past, splitting words and creating new words was always one of the most troublesome things for Locke, because it was too difficult. But now, under the vivid image of the commander's elder sister and the interaction between teachers and students, he fell in love with this homework project instead. It's very interesting. Compare the body to an A, and then use the body to compare it to an I to draw circles. Locke hummed happily. Finally, their cheerful laughter attracted the attention of Miss 2B and Miss A2. When I opened the door, I saw a strange scene. You two, I believe in your wickedness, can you play with this? Miss 2B looked at the two who were still composing words with a speechless expression. Admiration. Lang Yan A2 frowned, said admiration, turned around and left. On the contrary, Miss 2B looked at them with great interest, with a smile on her face and a look of interest in her eyes. Apparently, she wants to play too. Queens, New York at night. In a small alley with a pungent smell, an elderly woman leaned on the wall with a painful face and walked towards home with difficulty. But after walking for a while, she fell straight to the wet ground. At the same time, a cloud of black fluid material emerged from her body. I'm dying, this body sucks, I need a new host for Locke. Huh, what a wonderful scent, this is the scent of my new host. A hoarse voice came out of the mouth of the black fluid substance. If Locke or Selena were here at this moment, they would be able to see at a glance what this black fluid substance was. That's right, this thing is one of the two remaining symbiotes that escaped from the Life Foundation. At this moment, a red figure swayed over from the building in the distance. Hey, Grandma, your good neighbor is here. The red figure quickly landed in front of the old woman and slowly helped her up. This red figure is not Spider-Man, who else could it be? Because of his old age and frailty, fell to the ground with no physical strength, and a bloodstain was left on his head. The situation seemed a little dangerous, and he had to be rushed to the hospital. Quickly analyzing the situation in front of him, Spider-Man immediately picked up the old grandmother and planned to swing in the direction of the hospital. But at this moment, the symbiote hidden in the old woman burst out and rushed towards Spider-Man. Row is that Spider-Man has spider telepathy to dodge in the first place, but because the speed of the symbiote is too fast, he still couldn't escape in time, and was instantly infected by the symbiote. What the hell is this? Pete Parker looked at this strange thing that suddenly appeared in horror, and wanted to get rid of him quickly. But this thing is just like dog skin plaster, once it gets on it, it's impossible to get rid of it easily. Soon, his entire body was overrun by the symbiote, turning into a black symbiote battle suit covering him. This feeling is so cool. At this moment, Pete Parker seems to have changed a person, feeling the majestic power in his body, and the freshness when he just became a Spider-Man reappears. Now he is faster, stronger, and his key personality has changed. The low keenness of the previous obedience disappeared, and turned into a high-profile mad and cool. Looking at the old woman on the ground, just a glance, he didn't have the slightest interest. Sending him to the hospital, what's the joke? Is it bad to dance? A strange thought appeared in his mind. Immediately, Pete Parker twisted his waist and danced beside the old woman angrily. The famous scene appeared. Hey, what are you doing? Get out of that old man. At this moment, a policeman put one hand on his waist and approached the dancing Spider-Man with a vigilant expression. Oh, I didn't do anything, just dance. We Queens residents, shouldn't we even have the right to dance? The black Spider-Man continued to move his irritated body as he turned to look at the policeman and said, When the police saw Spider-Man's appearance, the vigilant look on their faces disappeared, and a look of excitement appeared instead. Breaking the door. Is this your latest battle suit? It's so cool, can you sign me? The policeman said excitedly while taking his hand away from his waist. Hearing the policeman's words, Spider-Man smiled confidently and said, "Oh, fans, do you want my autograph? This one is okay, where do you want to sign it?" "Forget it, I'll sign it directly on your P-shares." As Spider-Man spoke, he shot a cobweb, pulling the police directly in front of him. Without further ado, he took off the policeman's trousers, and then slapped the policeman's P-share heavily, leaving a red palm print on it. "Okay, greetings and autographs from the good neighbors. Don't get too excited." After doing all this, Spider-Man smiled wickedly, jumped, and flew out with a cobweb, just like that. Looking at the back of Spider-Man's departure, the policeman's face was bewildered, and his face still had a distorted expression, which was really painful. The Spider-Man in front of him was very different from what he had imagined. If he hadn't ended up swinging away by the cobweb, he would have seriously suspected that the guy just now was playing a prank on him by a brat pretending to be Spider-Man. Touching the red spot, the policeman shook his head. "Is this still everyone's good neighbor? It's just like that, it's deadly." A few days later, in a prison in New York, in a single room, a man was lying on the narrow window looking at the scenery outside, his face full of yearning. "Ferocious beasts can never be locked up. I will definitely escape from here, Gia," the man said to himself while looking at the outside, while constantly grinning evilly. Just then, a prison guard knocked on his door with a baton. "Cletus Cassidy, your girlfriend has come to visit, 30 minutes from now." As the prison guard spoke, he opened the door of his cell. Hearing the prison guard's words, the man smiled, dragged his ankles and walked out towards the door. In this prison BACB, under normal circumstances, no one will be able to live in a single room, and no one will wear shackles when they are in the room. For the beautiful country, the so-called human rights are regarded more than anything else. But the performance of the man in front of him at this moment is obviously extraordinary. But if you look at his previous resume, you can see why he was treated so specially. Because the guy in front of him called Cletus Cassidy is a serial killer, and he is also the kind of evil guy who likes to kill. This guy is an unscrupulous scum, and at a very young age, he had a special affection for his mother. Because of this, his mother always wanted to kill him, but in the end his mother was killed by his father instead. Finally, he testified against his father, causing his father to die in the electric chair. Not only that, but when he was very young, he killed his grandmother by pushing her down the stairs. Combining these kinds of things, it is enough to show that this guy is a natural bad seed, and has reached the point where there is no cure. Looking at Cletus' sinister gaze, the prison guard holding the baton didn't say a word, and tapped him heavily on the back. But the beaten Cletus seemed to have no pain nerves, looked at him with a wicked smile, and said, "Have you not eaten today? A little more next time, because there are not many days when you can eat by yourself. One day, I will kill you, no, I will kill your whole family, Gia." Hearing Cletus' words, the prison guard's face was extremely pale. "You madman, just keep screaming. You don't want to leave here in your life, fall into my hands, I won't make you feel better. Get out now, no more than 1 second in 30 minutes, or I'll see how I clean up you." Gia, I definitely won't take another second," Cletus said with a sneer, and walked out directly. When I came to the window of the visit, a woman with an enchanting figure sat there with a strange smile. Seeing Cletus come out, the woman's face was full of distress. "Have these fellows treated you?" I'm fine, I'll definitely leave here in a few days," Cletus said confidently. Hearing his words, the woman smiled slyly and said, "It won't take a few days, you will be able to come out today, I brought you a good thing." Quote? Cletus looked stunned, not understanding what the woman meant. At this moment, the woman stretched her thin hand into the small window under the bulletproof glass. Seeing this, Cletus was stunned for a moment, and curiously stretched out his fingers and collided with the woman's fingers. At this moment, a red fluid substance spread like an ant colony along the woman's fingers and spread to the man's hand. In just an instant, this strange red fluid life merged into Cletus' body. Immediately, the already lawless and very evil Cletus had a strange smile that was even more of a Liao person on his face. "Wait for me, I'll be out soon," Cletus said, looking at the woman outside the glass window. Then, he got up and walked directly towards his cell. Seeing that Cletus sat down for less than 3 minutes, he immediately got up and left. The prison guard who guarded him immediately became vigilant and came to him with a fierce look. "What tricks do you want to play? Sit down for me. Gia, I want to go back to the room to get something," the man said with a wicked smile. "No, once you leave this room it means your visit is over and you can't come out again." "Oh, yes, then forget it. I wanted to go inside and clean you up, but now I'll do it directly. Save the trouble." After saying that, the corners of Cletus' mouth slightly lifted, his body suddenly changed, and a scary scarlet monster appeared in front of the prison guard. There was no hesitation, just a big mouth. The head of the prison guard was directly bitten off. "I said, one day I will kill you. It feels so good. Today is my slaughter day. Yes, I call it slaughter. Gia. Shield Secret Base." Nick Fury looked at a document in his hand with a solemn expression. The cigarette butt in his hand was about to burn his fingers, and he didn't seem to know. "When did this happen?" Nick Fury raised his hand, shoved the cigarette butt into the ashtray, and twisted it again. "Just yesterday, in a prison in suburban New York, 43 people were massacred in broad daylight. Among them, 25 prison guards and 18 prisoners," Natasha Romanoff said with a solemn expression. "What is the relationship between decedent and the murderer? Except for one of the prison guards who had a grudge against that guy, the rest of them have nothing to do with him. So, is this a random massacre?" Nick Fury said with a heavy sigh. "Yes. Is there another devil as inhumane as that woman? What a headache. Unlike that woman, we still don't know the details of that woman. But this guy, we got his profile. Cletus Cassidy, the perpetrator of several recent serial killings, before committing this massacre. He has already carried more than a dozen lives on his hands, and he is a human demon." Natasha Romanoff presents Nick Fury with a photo of Cletus Cassidy. Looking at the photo, Nick Fury nodded silently. With a fierce face, it is indeed what a demon should look like. "But compared to this guy, I'm more curious about what makes him a monster. Find him for me. This time it's time for the captain to go out, and it's time for him to adjust to the world again," Nick Fury said thoughtfully. Hearing his words, Natasha Romanoff nodded silently. "With the help of Rogers, the pressure on my side will be a lot easier. Well, by the way, how is that big guy now? Still unwilling to agree to our invitation?" Dr. Banner did resist a little bit, but after going through that incident, he is much calmer than before. "I didn't run away without seeing us. I have taken him to our base. Let him get used to the environment here first. If he is not satisfied and wants to leave, we will not stop him. Because I have seen more terrifying monsters, have I begun to feel that I am normal? Are you slowly accepting the real me?" A playful smile appeared on Nick Fury's face. "I don't rule out this factor. Speaking of which, compared to that abominable kid, Dr. Banner really looks much cuter," Natasha Romanoff said seriously. As soon as Locke was mentioned, the original scene couldn't help but appear in her mind, which made her shudder. Although she can't have real hatred for that guy, she doesn't want to deal with him anymore. It was her nightmare. It seems that it was a very correct decision to find you to contact Hulk. At present, the only one who can appease Hulk is you. How did you do it?" Nick Fury asked Natasha Romanoff curiously. Natasha Romanoff smiled and said, "Sir, you are flattering. I can't appease that guy. The main reason why he is willing to temporarily enter our base is due to his girlfriend." "Is that so? General Ross's daughter?" "Yes. Well, I see, you did a good job. Besides Banner, you should pay more attention to Tony Stark, although this guy is a little too arrogant sometimes. But I have to say that he is a genius. In terms of technology, this guy may be the only one who has a chance to surpass Locke. Quote, beyond that fool, is it really possible?" Natasha Romanoff was skeptical. If Nick Fury said that before contacting Locke, she didn't think there was a big problem. But now, she thought in her heart that it was impossible. Although for the time being she has not found out where that terrifying woman came from. But according to the large amount of information she compiled, she guessed that the woman was probably created by Locke by means of technology. Because that woman appeared just 1 month after Locke created his private underground experiment. The timing of this is too coincidental, and based on the feedback from Tony Stark. They had met at an altitude of 10,000 meters. According to Tony Stark's own description, the other party turned off his artificial intelligence in an instant. Imagine being able to make an extremely confident, even conceited, Tony Stark take the initiative to admit that the guy's technology is stronger than his own. One can imagine how high the level of technology that man now has. In this way, relying on the means of technology to create a merciless killing machine makes sense. Just when she was still thinking, a hurried knock on the door rang. Before Nick Fury could say please, the door was pushed open first. The person here is Hill Agent. Sir, I think you should come out and take a look. The Hill Agent's expression was extremely solemn, unprecedentedly solemn. Rao's expression at this moment is that Natasha Romanoff, who has worked with her for many years, has never seen it. In the dignified, there is also a strong fear, yes, it is an unparalleled fear. Hearing her words, Nick Fury did not speak, but frowned, and followed Hill quickly and walked out. Natasha Romanoff also walked out curiously. When they reached the huge command hall, a group of staff members had already stood up. Everyone's eyes were full of horror, and the entire hall was unusually quiet, and the sound of needles falling to the ground could be heard. Stunned, Natasha Romanoff also moved his gaze to the big screen that everyone was looking at. Immediately, she only felt that her scalp was numb, and her whole body became cold. An indescribable sense of oppression suddenly descended upon her, causing the data files she was holding in her hand to fall to the ground. The reason why she had such a big reaction was because the scene that appeared in front of her at the moment was too shocking. I saw densely packed anti-gravity auxiliary robots like crows in groups, flying from all directions, and then gathered over the Rockefeller estate. A piece of darkness, the number is constantly increasing, and then like a dark cloud over the city, it covers the entire sky, obscuring the sky and the sun, as if the end is coming. What the heck is this? What is that guy trying to do? What a terrifying scene. The radius of dozens of kilometers was covered, and those who didn't know it thought it was a dark cloud. Is this the strength of the Rockefeller family? It's really terrible. It turned out to be an anti-gravity assist robot. Anti-gravity assist robot. It's the auxiliary robot floating around the witch. The power of those anti-gravity assisted robots, we have seen it, it is a powerful metamorphosis. It can fire conventional bullets, spray flames, fire lasers, etc. It is a mobile arsenal. To have built so many anti-gravity robots, this is enough to attack a country. Is he going to start a war? I don't know what to say, and everyone took a deep breath. If what is said is true, that day is about to change. Listening to the discussion of the group of people around, Nick Fury's face was extremely gloomy, and he didn't know what to think in his mind. Without speaking, he picked up the private phone and dialed. This time the call was quickly connected, and a slightly old voice sounded. Hee, what the young master said is true, you really called me. The voice at the other end of the conversation had a hint of playfulness. Mr. Mo, what does the one in your family want to do? Such a big movement will cause panic among the people, are you crazy? Nick Fury said with a slight anger. Hearing this, Lao Mo's voice sank obviously. Xiao Fu, pay attention to the tone of your speech, are you questioning me? That's not what I mean, I am the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I have the obligation and responsibility to know your purpose. The purpose, isn't it obvious? War, but don't worry, it's not you. After all, before Nick Fury could react, Mo directly hung up the phone. Left alone, Nick Fury was stunned, and a huge wave was set off in his heart. Scolded fake, these two lunatics. Nick Fury squeezed the phone tightly, as if to burst it. Sir, is there a result? What are they trying to do? Natasha Romanoff and Hill looked at Nick Fury with serious looks. You guessed it, he's really going to start a war. Nick Fury sat down, as if losing all his strength. What? Hearing Nick Fury's words, everyone was stunned, their eyes filled with disbelief. It's really going to start a war. Is this a coup? Hill asked with a look of horror. Shaking his head, he said, the object is not us. When Nick Fury said it wasn't them, the group was inexplicably relieved. Sure enough, the joys and sorrows of this world are not common. When things don't happen to me and I become a spectator, I am not so afraid, and even have the mentality of watching a play. That is, don't know yet, but whoever it is, that's going to change. Nick Fury murmured. Although they are not being targeted now. But who can guarantee the future? What kind of despair would it be when the densely packed robots overwhelmed them? Just thinking about it, he felt like he was about to lose Roar's breath. There is really no problem in including the Rockefeller family as a SSS threat. And now, except for the Rockefellers, he also wants to list Locke, the 14-year-old evildoer, alone. SSSS class, the threat of destroying the Star class. Rockefeller Manor. Locke stood quietly in the huge garden. Excitedly, he looked at the millions of anti-gravity assistance robots suspended above his head. After almost a month, his $1 million goal was finally achieved. Next, it is time to move towards the goal of 10 million, then 100 million, 1 billion, 10 billion. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look forward to it even more. When it does get to that point, what will it be like? Spectacular scene. He can't imagine it. With a big wave of his hand, an anti-gravity floating throne similar to Dragon Ball Frieza's car galloped from a distance and appeared in front of him in an instant. This was specially created for this time of invasion. He sat up unhurriedly, and the floating throne slowly rose, bringing him into the air. Under the control of the artificial intelligence Nines, the anti-gravity assistant robot, which was covered in black, moved quickly, and Chi-Chi came behind him. Like a well-trained army. It is also like the deep abyssal beast who was convinced behind him, with a terrifying momentum. In fact, under the control of artificial intelligence 9S, Locke's army of anti-gravity assisted robots is far more powerful than the human army. The two are not of the same order of magnitude at all, whether it is the tacit understanding of cooperation or the ability to work together. Or the disadvantage that the physical body is not as good as the ability to fight against the mechanical body, it is destined that the human army is impossible to compare with Locke's robot army. Yoba Core obey orders and set off. Locke made a loud noise, and an aura that seemed to startle the sky erupted from his body, shaking the universe. Yes, hearing the order, the three Yoba Core, 2B, A2, the commander responded in unison. Immediately, the three pairs of anti-gravity mechanical flying wings quickly opened from their backs and came to Locke's side in an instant. The three of them are like three angels who fell from the sky. They are valiant, but they are murderous. Just looking at them makes people shudder. Such a big movement naturally attracted the attention of ordinary residents around. Everyone looked at the dark sky with horror on their faces, feeling that their hearts were being clenched, and there was an unimaginable suffocation. What is this black mass? A flock of crows. That's terrifying. What a flock of crows. I just observed it with a telescope, like a high-tech flight device. Not just the flight machine, but a man and three women. There is actually a pair of wings behind the woman. Is that Angel? It's amazing, but it's too far to see their faces. Quickly take a photo. This is a shocking news, it will definitely make the headlines. A group of residents talked a lot, and immediately took out their mobile phones and started filming. But at this moment, the black army of auxiliary robots disappeared in front of their eyes at an unimaginable speed. You must know that the anti-gravity flight device and auxiliary robot built by Locke can easily break through 10 times the speed of sound, even the most advanced F-22 fighter in the beautiful country. And the moving speed of his floating throne is even more terrifying, twice the speed of the anti-gravity mechanical flying wings. Yes, the floating throne can easily explode at a speed that exceeds the speed of sound 20 times. This can also understand why a group of people hadn't reacted yet, and Locke took his robot army away quickly. However, although Locke's speed of leaving was fast, it was still not faster than the hand speed of a group of solitary dogs. A video of his robot army was still filmed and posted online. In fact, with Locke's means, he could easily shut up all the media and block news. But this time Locke didn't do it. Since it has been photographed, let them send it out. This can also be regarded as a vaccination for the people. After all, in 7 months, the Battle of New York will begin, and then it will be the real doomsday scene. The emergence of Chitauri will completely subvert people's understanding of the world. So let them take a look at their robot army first, which is an eye-opener. In addition to this, there is another reason, that is, it is impossible for him to hide in the dark forever, and it is impossible to hide. After all, his genius name is going to be exposed, and since this is the case, it is no longer necessary to conceal it deliberately. Let them go crazy. This world, the era that belongs to him, is also time to open. Locke thought so. In the discussion hall of Wakanda, there was always a bad premonition in T'Chaka's heart. The time limit Locke gave them was 3 days, so during these 3 days, he was restless. Although he himself did not believe that the Rockefellers could directly send troops to attack them. But that uneasy feeling has not disappeared for a long time, instead it has a tendency to intensify, which makes him very painful. For 3 days, I haven't had a good night's sleep, it's just torture. Suri, have you discovered anything special now? This was the 15th time T'Chaka asked today. Princess Shu Rui felt helpless when she heard her father's words. Father, I told you long ago, that guy is just a mouthful, he's just a small Chable family. No matter how lofty his position in the beautiful country is, it is absolutely impossible to command the army of the beautiful country to attack us. The words he said were nothing but slanderous words, nothing to be afraid of. Princess Shu Rui said confidently. Yeah, father, you don't have to take it to heart and waste your precious time. T'Challa on the side also said .0. However, just as his voice landed, a rapid alarm sounded in the huge hall, and then the air defense alarms of the entire country sounded. Warning, warning, a large number of unknown flight objects were found flying towards our national line at high speed. The intention of the other party is being analyzed, the probability of no threat is 10%, and the probability of threat is 90%. Preliminary judgment that the other party is not good, the danger level is SSS level. The voice of an artificial intelligence sounded, and the faces of the 3 immediately changed. King T'Chaka's face became even more solemn. And Princess Shu Rui and T'Challa went from casual to unbelievable. It's impossible. The 2 looked at each other with disbelief on their faces. The other ministers also had expressions of shock on their faces. Apparently they had the same idea as Princess Shu Rui and T'Challa, thinking that Locke was just lying. However, the sudden alarm sound at this moment shattered their beautiful fantasy, and the development of things seems to be going in the direction they least expect to see. Retrieve the surveillance footage immediately. Princess Shu Rui frowned and said. Immediately, the artificial intelligence retrieved a holographic image and appeared in the conference hall where they were located. With the appearance of the picture, everyone was shocked, as if they had been electrocuted, and their bodies began to tremble slightly. Because they saw a terrifying scene that they will never forget in their entire lives. Just 50 kilometers away from their national line, there was a dark cloud-like thing coming towards them at high speed. In the blink of an eye, the distance of 50 kilometers was over. Suddenly, they immediately saw what the black piece was. It turned out to be a strange mechanical body that could break free from gravity. In the past 3 days, their king has deliberately investigated all the information about the 14-year-old boy of the Rockefeller family. In this way, they naturally knew what this peculiarly shaped mechanical body was. This is a terrible killer. It can fire conventional bullets, and can also breathe fire lasers, etc. It is simply a mobile arsenal. Such a terrible thing, just facing a fight is already tricky enough. But now it is densely packed, I don't know how many. According to their estimates, at least there are more than 1 million. So, how could they not feel terrified? This is simply their nightmare. Millions of mechanical killers formed a terrifying mechanical army, and the army overwhelmed the realm. Is this the method of that terrifying young man? T'Chaka felt a burst of despair in his heart. He thought about many ways for Locke to deal with them, but he never thought about this one. Because this kind of situation was not in his consideration at all, and before that, he had never imagined that Locke's methods could reach such a situation. And the person who felt more incredible than him at this moment was his daughter, Princess Shu Rui. As the chief scientist of Wakanda, she clearly knows how terrifying the mechanical killer that appears in front of her at the moment, and how superb the level of technology is. When she saw this kind of thing for the first time, her first reaction was that this kind of thing should not appear on their planet at all. Because this is a product whose technology level far exceeds the existing technology in their world, roused that her mind is unable to make such a sophisticated mechanical body. There are too many technological elements in this terrifying mechanical killer, such as anti-gravity, laser weapons, artificial intelligence and so on. It is unbelievable to be able to integrate several high technologies into a small body. If she were to develop it, the volume it would create would be at least 10 times larger than what was seen now. And that's the difference between them. This is the same as making a chip. The smaller the difficulty, the greater the difficulty. It is not an order of magnitude at all. The residents living in Wakanda are also staring at the sky with dumbfounded expressions. Looking at the black army of machines, everyone fell into panic, and their bodies couldn't help shaking. Fear, an unspeakable fear overwhelms them. They have never seen such a scene. This is completely the scene of the end. My God, what the hell is this? Has aliens invaded? It's terrifying. Is this going to attack our country? Why? Quick, hide in the underground bomb shelter immediately, the war is about to start. With the pressure of Locke's mechanical army, the entire Wakanda society is in chaos. Rapid sirens constantly sounded in various cities of the Wakanda country, accompanied by various screams and cries. The war has not yet begun, but Wakanda has begun to fall. In Wakanda's Congress Hall, everyone's faces were extremely solemn, and the atmosphere dropped to freezing point. Looking at the holographic image in front of him, and then looking at the people who were already caught in a riot, King T'Chaka's face was so gloomy that water could drip. Gather all our fighters to meet the enemy, T'Chaka said loudly. During these 3 days, he has been feeling uneasy, and he has been planning for the worst, but he didn't expect it to happen today. Although the situation in front of him was much more terrifying than he had imagined before, his dignity as a Wakanda warrior would never allow him to surrender directly. If he wants to surrender, he can do it within those 3 days. But he did not do so, which is enough to explain his attitude. It is one thing to win or not to fight, and it is another to dare to fight. And their warriors of Wakanda never dared to fight a war. Yes, T'Challa nodded heavily, with a hint of war on his face. As the future king, his courage is no joke. He is willing to sacrifice his life for the safety of his country. As the saying goes, the rise and fall of a country is the responsibility of everyone, and even everyone has a responsibility, not to mention the future king. In an instant, a Wakanda army consisting of hundreds of thousands of soldiers gathered in front of the Wakanda capital. It was densely packed, like a swarm of ants. On the other side, Princess Shurui, relying on his own artificial intelligence, dispatched thousands of combat drones to follow him. Around the soldiers, all kinds of tanks, armored vehicles, and high-tech energy cannons were waiting in battle, aiming at Locke's mechanical legion. As long as there is movement on Locke's side, she will fire without hesitation to destroy the group of intruders. T'Challa, one wearing a Black Panther battle suit and one wearing a special armor, stood in front of the army, staring at the mechanical legion above. Their high fighting spirit overflowed from their bodies. You are whiter than me. You are whiter than me. A peculiar roar shout came out from the mouth of a group of warriors, which was earth-shattering and deafening. Above the sky, Locke leaned lazily on his floating throne, holding his cheeks with one hand, and tapping lightly on the table with the other, relaxed and comfortable. He quietly looked at Wakanda below. The corners of his mouth were slightly upturned, revealing a smile of approval. An unparalleled domineering burst out from his body, making him look like a king who looks down on the world and controls everything. At the moment, he is very much like the Dragon Ball world, the Frieza who is suspended in outer space and quietly watching the Saiyan planet. It's just that Frieza controls the life and death of the Saiyan planet, and he controls the life and death of the high-tech country of Wakanda. Although the levels are different, the feeling is the same. This feeling of mastering the life and death of others is not so wonderful, but one thing is undeniable, that is, it is very cool. As expected of a Wakanda warrior, this fighting spirit is still okay, I admire it. Locke said calmly, with seriousness in his eyes. But admiration is admiration, but Vibranium is determined to win. Geez, finally send them a message that as long as they hand over 70% of their Vibranium reserves, I can retire. Otherwise, once I start, what I want is not 70%, but all. Even if you destroy the entire Wakanda, you will not hesitate. Locke said coldly. As long as he can achieve his goals, he doesn't care what kind of person he becomes. Rao became a supervillain in their hearts, so what? Since it is a villain, it is natural to do what the villain does. Is there a problem with this situation now? No problem, he asked himself. Yes, I-9s, immediately connected to Wakanda's AI. Soon Princess Shurui was horrified to find that her artificial intelligence control system was directly paralyzed. At the same time, a piece of Wakanda text appeared on her smart big screen. Looking at the text on the screen, Princess Shurui looked complicated. The other party actually wanted 70% of their Vibranium resources. If you don't agree, you will definitely invade, and you won't give them a cent. Father, maybe we really should surrender. We are facing a supergiant, and there is no chance of winning. There is no shame in surrendering. Princess Shurui came to her father and brother with a complicated face and told them what Locke meant. Hearing Shurui's words, a touch of bitterness appeared on both of their faces. Because they themselves are very clear, if this war really starts, they have no chance of winning. Just when they were still hesitation, Locke made another move. On the floating throne, Locke turned his attention to the body of Miss A2 beside him. A2, it's time to show your strength and give them another deterrent. Otherwise, these guys thought my confidence was just because there was a mechanical army. In fact, my real confidence is Yuba's troops, my 3 wives. Locke said with a half smile. Hearing Locke's words, the 3 of them smiled and groaned, and they were very useful for Locke's praise. Understood. A2 nodded with a smile, his figure flashed out, and he crossed Wakanda's national line in an instant. Immediately, the anti-aircraft weapons deployed on the national line automatically launched an attack on her. One missile after another, energy rays swept toward the A2 with overwhelming might. In an instant, the A2 was completely enveloped, and the explosion directly swallowed the A2. Did you make it? Seeing such a scene, the hearts of all Wakanda warriors were filled with joy. The strength of the team of invaders in front of me seems to be nothing more than that. But when the smoke of gunpowder dissipated, their hearts fell to the bottom of the valley, like falling into an ice cellar. Because the woman who was hit by the artillery fire was suspended in midair unharmed, with a disdainful smile on her face. How is this possible? Is this woman a steel and iron bone? There is nothing at all. It's terrifying. This guy is just like another woman, a devil. Just when a group of Wakanda warriors felt extremely frightened, A2's figure disappeared directly. When she reappeared, she was already in front of a Taiwan air defense weapon. The long sword suspended on the back of A2 flew out automatically and fell into her hands. Silver light suddenly appeared, like a meteor piercing the sky. In an instant, all the anti-aircraft weapons were torn apart and exploded with a rumble, and in the thick flames, they turned into a pile of broken copper and iron. Instant, spike, but okay. Seeing such a scene, the warriors in Wakanda swallowed their saliva in unison. Their hearts were shocked, their psychological defense line collapsed suddenly. This woman was too terrifying. Not to mention the overwhelming mechanical army, let alone this woman, she should be able to slaughter all of them. After all, this woman can even resist a missile attack. And the weapons in their hands are simply toys compared to missiles, and as far as that woman is concerned, they are not at all lethal. After easily getting the anti-aircraft weapon, A2 jumped up, jumping hundreds of meters high, and landed on their energy barrier lightly. The cold-faced A2 looked at the energy barrier under him with disdain. The corners of his mouth turned up slightly, but his fists were clenched tightly. Then he raised his fist high, and slammed it down with a fierce punch. Boom! The collision between the fist and the energy barrier caused a huge amount of sound, and the entire energy barrier vibrated violently. The people below were like ants who were kept in the dark, and their hearts could not help but tremble as the punch hit. What does she want to do? Break our energy barrier with her bare hands? How is this possible? There should be a limit to self-confidence. When everyone wanted to understand the purpose of A2, everyone was confused. I have seen fierce people, but I have never seen such fierce people, and they want to break their energy barrier with bare hands. How can that be? To know their energy barrier, even ordinary ICBMs can't break through. The woman in front of her actually wanted to break open with her bare hands, which, in their opinion, was simply nonsense. But just when they thought so, a click sound reached their ears. Immediately, everyone was shocked. Man, it's numb. No way. There was such a voice in everyone's heart. Looking up and looking at the sky, a crack appeared on their energy barrier. Seeing such a scene, everyone's hearts were chilled, as if they had fallen into hell, and their eyes were full of horror. This woman actually broke their energy barrier with one punch. This is so outrageous. Quick, recharge immediately, open the overload defense barrier. Princess Shu Rui also looked terrified, but unlike ordinary people, he quickly pressed the high-tech controller on his arm. Suddenly, the energy barrier guarding their Wakanda's last line of defense was overloaded. Electricity for the entire country of Wakanda was delivered above the energy barrier in front of it. At this moment, the entire country of Wakanda has lost power except for the energy barrier. An earth-shattering hum sounded, and the energy barrier that had been smashed by a two-punch was quickly repaired. Not only that, the defense level of the energy barrier has also increased by one level. Looking at the energy barrier that was quickly repaired under him, A2's face showed interest. Interesting, really good defensive ability. A2 praised. But then again, if it was smashed with one punch, it would be boring. And now, it's even more fun to watch. With a slight smile, the mechanical flying wings behind the A2 vibrated slightly, and the A2 flew directly into the sky. Seeing such a scene, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. What's more, there was a burst of cheers. They thought that A2 was going to give up because they couldn't break their energy barrier. It wasn't until they saw that Miss A2, who flew high in the sky, turned around and began to dive down at a high speed. They were stunned again. Fake. This is not giving up at all, but launching a more violent attack. Also swooping and running, not to play like this. This is what everyone has in mind. At the moment when this idea appeared, everyone was shocked to see the woman swooping down from the sky. Like a meteorite, there was a crimson fire around the body. It was obviously a flame that was rubbing against the air too fast. However, at this moment, the A2 body is wrapped in a layer of silver-white metal outer armor, and it looks like a stream of light. Boom, rumble rumble, boom. 3 sounds came out, but because the interval was too short, it sounded like one. The first is the sound of Miss A2 hitting the Wakanda energy barrier. The second is the sound of the energy barrier bursting. As for the third way, it was the sound of Miss A2 crashing to the ground after breaking through the energy barrier. The A2 lady, who is covered in adamantium armor, has become the hardest human shell in the world. After smashing Wakanda's energy barrier in one fell swoop, it fell to the ground and smashed heavily on the hard ground. Suddenly, the earth cracked and collapsed, and a giant deep pit with a diameter of hundreds of meters appeared in the eyes of a group of soldiers. Shockwaves swept all around like a tsunami, and the earth began to shake violently like an earthquake. Under the dual influence of shockwave and earthquake, the soldiers who were closer to the crater collapsed. From Locke's point of view, the Wakanda soldiers below are like wheat hit by a hurricane. Seeing the amazing scene in front of them, all the Wakanda soldiers swallowed and panicked. The fighting spirit just now disappeared completely, and now the only thing left is fear. Not to mention the mechanical legion deployed in the sky, the combat power shown by this woman is enough to crush them. And such a woman, there are 2 people above the sky, no one can say what their strength is. But it shouldn't be too much. Thinking of this, their hearts became even more desperate. Facing the group of guys in front of them, it is impossible for them to win, there is no chance of winning. They are not afraid of fighting, but they are afraid of such a winless war. Because for them, this is a moth to a flame, a death. It wasn't just a group of ordinary soldiers who fell into despair, Wakanda's King T'Challa and the future King T'Challa also fell into despair. With only one person's strength, they broke the energy barrier built by the whole country. Is it necessary to start such a war with disparity in strength? The answer is obviously no. There is no need, because once they start, their Wakanda is bound to die. With that guy's means, he might slaughter their entire country. Such an outcome is something they cannot accept or bear no matter what. Princess Shu Rui is right, in the face of such a terrifying enemy, it is really not ashamed for them to surrender. Hopefully, he can keep his promise. Since the establishment of Wakanda, their entire country has been in a state of rapid development and has never encountered any major setbacks. By now, their technological level has surpassed that of the world's first power. According to his plan, in this development, they don't need to continue to close the country at all. They can appear in front of the world as they really are. Because he felt that they Wakanda already have enough strength to protect the security of their own country. He thought so and planned to do so. The plan for opening the country has been written in his National Development Policy Plan. But no matter how hard he counts, he never counted that Wakanda would go through this ordeal. Everything that happened today completely shattered his previous confidence and arrogance, leaving nothing left. In front of that 14-year-old boy, their self-righteous super high-tech level was simply not worth mentioning. The artificial intelligence was instantly hacked, and the energy barrier used for national defense was smashed with one punch. All of this clearly tells them how huge the gap between them and this teenager is. The young man in front of him must not be offended, or he will destroy the country. Heart ashes is the only word that can describe his mood at the moment. Scared, they are really scared. When you should be cowardly, you must be cowardly. Rao is young and energetic, and T'Challa, who just said that he will fight to the death, also shut his mouth at this moment. After all, he could die, but millions of Wakanda's citizens couldn't die with him. That's their Wakanda hope, and hope can't die. On the sky carrier of S.H.I.E.L.D. A group of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are also afraid to come out at the moment. Although they were not the ones who faced Locke's mechanical legion, they still felt an unparalleled sense of oppression from the picture in front of them. The hearts seemed to be uncomfortably pulled by someone, and the cold sweat unconsciously wet their backs. If they are the ones facing this mechanical army, how desperate should they be? They dared not think about it any longer. Hopefully we don't stand on his opposite side in our lives, said the Hill agent standing beside Nick Fury with a complicated expression. And her words immediately resonated, and a group of people nodded in unison. The meaning is self-evident. Nick Fury didn't say a word, just stared at the screen in front of him, not knowing what was going on in his mind. After a while, he took out a retro BB machine from his pocket, looked at it and put it in again. Now even if that woman comes, maybe it can't do anything. After all, that guy is so scary. He shook his head with a wry smile, full of powerlessness. Above the height of Wakanda, Locke quietly looked at the energy barrier that had been blasted by Mist 2, with a playful smile on his face. The energy barrier that can make A2 spend a little effort to break through is indeed Wakanda. But now, it's time for me to come and get hold of them, Locke said, and moved his consciousness. Immediately, the overwhelming army of auxiliary robots flew towards Wakanda like locusts. In an instant, time stopped at a height of 100 meters above the head of Wakanda's army. Then, the anti-gravity assisted robots were quickly arranged and combined, and finally formed a huge amount of mechanical cube to surround everyone. Now all of them have become turtles in the urn. As long as Locke has a thought, they can easily kill them. What is the joy of violence? That's it. To win by quantity suppression, although it feels a bit incompetent, but it's cool. Isn't the fight all about firepower? The more powerful the firepower, the more exciting the battle, and it will rule all the bells and whistles. Looking at the mechanical legion that surrounded them, a group of Wakanda warriors did not dare to move at all, and the atmosphere did not dare to come out. For fear that if you move around, you will be judged as an enemy by this strange mechanical killer, and then kill them. The floating throne flew down unhurriedly, with 2B and the commander following closely behind him, like the left the king's good right protector. Looking at Locke slowly descending, T'Chaka was shocked, and the strong sense of oppression made him extremely cautious. Soon, Locke appeared not far from him, but Locke still needed to look up at the height he was at. Obviously, Locke did it on purpose. The purpose is to create a feeling of being superior to their Wakanda. In fact, this is indeed the case. They did not have the strength to have an equal dialogue with Locke. This is the essence of this cruel world, the weak eat the strong, and everything speaks with strength. As the king of a country, he is very clear. If he can stand above this height, he will also treat his opponent like this. Although he was reluctant in his heart, T'Chaka still bowed and showed humility to Locke. You can't beat it, you can't beat it, there's nothing to say. When it's time to admit it, you have to admit it. They have been suppressed to this point, and the face of the so-called king of a country is no longer important. Now he just wants to keep Wakanda from being wiped out by the boy in front of him. Master Locke, we surrendered and conceded defeat. What you want, I will give you. I also urge you to keep your promise and retire. T'Chaka sighed and said with a complicated expression. For half his life, he never thought that one day he would surrender to the hands of an underage boy. This is really incredible. Don't you think it's a bit late to say you want to surrender now? Locke sat on the floating throne and looked at T'Chaka below with a playful expression. Hearing Locke's words, T'Chaka was taken aback and set off a huge wave. Could it be? As if thinking of something terrifying, he immediately fell to one knee. Father. Seeing that T'Challa suddenly knelt down, his son T'Challa tried to hold him, but T'Challa pushed him away. As the ruler of a country, it is absolutely impossible to do this kind of kneeling before people. This not only humiliates one's own dignity, but also humiliates the dignity of the entire country. However, for the monarch, the people's livelihood and the grain are the first. Everything has to be put behind the lives of the people, which has always been his attitude in governing the country. And because the Locke in front of him already had the previous ruthless means. So he was very worried that Locke would go crazy and attack his people, which he never wanted to see. So what's the point of bending your knees? As long as he can protect his country from harm, he will do it even if the 5 bodies are cast into the body. But what he didn't expect was that just after his knees fell, the young man in front of him showed a displeased expression and waved his hand at him. A gust of wind came towards him and flew him upside down and smashed into the crowd. However, because there were a lot of soldiers behind him, the King T'Chaka was not hurt. Seeing that Locke actually shot at his father, T'Challa, the son, turned red, and immediately wanted to shoot at Locke. But at this moment, T'Chaka's voice came out. Don't mess around, I'm fine, thank you Master Locke for being merciful. T'Chaka walked out of the crowd with a complex expression on his face. I was slapped, and in the end I had to thank others for their kindness of not killing. I can imagine the aggrieved feeling of this feeling. However, he clearly knew that the young man in front of him had indeed kept his hands on him. Otherwise, based on his understanding and the strength of this guy, he would have already died. Since the other party doesn't kill him, it means that everything has to be discussed, which is good news. But the premise is that his son can't be confused at this time, otherwise, even if the king and Laozi come, they won't be able to save them. Seeing that his father came back safe and sound, T'Challa could not help but let out a sigh of relief, and then released his clenched fist. But at this moment, the commander came to T'Challa's face in a flash, and pushed out with a palm. The powerful force immediately vomited blood from T'Challa's mouth, and flew backwards. Finally, his head tilted, but he fainted. Is it worthy of you to unleash murderous intent on my young master? The commander said coldly, his eyebrows full of murderous intent. My son is ignorant, please spare his life. T'Chaka looked at the commander pleadingly. Okay, come back. Locke's calm voice sounded. Hearing the order, the commander nodded and flew back to Locke again. His eyes turned to T'Chaka. You should be very clear that what I want is not your kneeling, your knees mean nothing to me. Locke said expressionlessly. I understand, I can give you 70% of the Vibranium resources you want. T'Chaka said with a distressed expression. Vibranium is the lifeblood of their country, the source of their wealth. The reason why their Wakanda can develop so fast is because of the terrifying benefits that Vibranium brings to them, BACB. Then they relied on these gains to develop their country's technology, which is how they can get to where they are today. So to put it bluntly, their Wakanda is a technology powerhouse built on Vibranium. Vibranium is their foundation, and without Vibranium, they will lose the super gold absorbing plugin. This is all detrimental to the development of their entire country. If it weren't for the fact that there was no way out, they would be unwilling to let go of the Vibranium or even if they were killed. Luckily this guy just said to take 70% of their Vibranium veins. Although this also caused them to bleed a lot, but breaking their arms to save their lives, they endured it when they gritted their teeth. After all, the country is important. The big deal is to raise the price of Vibranium a little bit in the future, and then reduce the export volume, so as to ensure the normal development of their country. During this period, the development direction of their entire country will have to make reasonable adjustments. Economic income cannot rely too much on Vibranium, and instead rely on their superb technology. But while he was still planning the future of his country in his mind, Locke's words directly plunged him into despair. Who told you that I only need 70% of the Vibranium reserves? Are you confused? Locke looked at T'Chaka with a playful expression. What, didn't you say that just now? T'Chaka looked at Locke in amazement and said. You also know that it was just now. I gave you a chance 3 days ago. What have you been doing? I just said that you surrender immediately and don't let me do it. But now I've done it, and once I do, I don't want 70%, but all. The fingers tapped lightly on the tabletop of the floating throne, and each tap seemed to hit T'Chaka's heart. It made him tremble uncontrollably. This feeling is really terrible. All. Hearing Locke's words, T'Chaka's pupils were about to dilate. This is really dying. This is to clean him up. Yes, you heard it right, it's all. Now you can lead the way. Is there a problem? Locke said unquestionably. But, T'Chaka wanted to say something, but Miss A2 disappeared in an instant. When she appeared again, she was already in front of T'Chaka. At the same time, a long sword was placed around T'Chaka's neck. If you say one more nonsense, believe it or not, I will cut off your head. A2 said with a cold expression. She was already cold and glamorous, but the momentum she showed at this moment was even more cold and ruthless. That's right, no more nonsense, I'll pull out your tongue. Miss 2B also said at this time. Hearing the words of the two female evil stars, T'Chaka couldn't help but hold back no matter how much he wanted to say. I'll take you there. T'Chaka nodded and led the way. Soon, the group came to the back of a huge palace, a dozen miles away from the palace. A huge amount of crater appeared, with a diameter of several kilometers and a depth of at least several hundred meters. As we all know, Vibranium is not a product of this planet in the first place. From the very beginning, it fell from outside the domain, and it was considered a kind of meteorite from outside the domain. One fell on the South Pole, and the other fell on Wakanda. It is precisely because of this that Vibranium is owned by Wakanda. Then there was a situation where they rose all the way as if they were hanging up. It can be said that Wakanda is simply out of luck. Whenever this precious metal falls in another country, that country is expected to rise rapidly. However, Locke has no interest in this. No matter which country it falls in, Vibranium will eventually be his. Standing quietly on the edge of the crater, Locke looked down. In the very center of the crater, there is a hill standing there. The dark mountain is like oil poured, and under the sunlight, it exudes a strange light. That hill was the Vibranium meteorite that fell on Wakanda. A long time ago, Locke heard that Wakanda's Vibranium reserves were amazing, but he didn't expect it to be so amazing. Preliminary estimates are at least 10 million tons. Definitely, compared with the general steel reserves, it is naturally incomparable. But know that this is Vibranium, and a gram can sell for $10,000. What is the concept of 10 million tons? Just terrifying. But now this precious thing is his own. Although he is not short of money, he is still very excited to think about it. With this 10 million tons of Vibranium, he can do too much. The build of several other members of Yoba's force, the build of the humanoid mech, and the full Vibranium battle suit he'd always wanted. No, it's not a full Vibranium armor now, it's a super nano armor that combines Vibranium and adamantium perfectly. That's right, their eyes have been put on the nano armor. He's completely ahead of Tony Stark now. Go the way of others, let others have no way to go, but it's okay. Really excited to think about it. Master Locke, although I really want to give you the Vibranium ore, but it's really too big, you won't be able to take it away for a while. Why don't you keep it with us for the time being, and move it slowly later? T'Chaka said with a secret smile in his heart. That's what he meant to say just now, even though Locke had already captured their Wakanda. But the weight of the Vibranium load is no joke. It is definitely not that easy to take away now. In his opinion, it is basically impossible. However, they didn't allow themselves to continue speaking, so he could only wait until now to speak. He really wanted to see a group of them collapsed. It should be a very interesting thing. But what he didn't expect was that Locke and his party did not appear in the expression he imagined. Instead, Chi-Chi looked at him with a playful expression. The feeling was like looking at a fool. T'Chaka, you are not bad, you are a good king, but your vision is too narrow. If you don't have this sentence, you seem to care, but in fact you want to watch the play. I'd really just keep Vibranium with you and mine it again when I need it. But now, if I don't show you how good the young master is, I feel sorry for you. After that, Locke smiled coldly. his mind moved, and countless auxiliary robots galloped towards the vibranium vein below. At the same time, they quickly arranged and combined, and instantly turned into a huge mechanical arm. Then, he grabbed the entire vibranium mountain with one hand, and it was as simple as drinking water. T'Chaka was stunned, his face full of disbelief. WTF, this works too. Locke had already thought about the function of modular assembly before building a large number of auxiliary robots. Therefore, each auxiliary robot has multiple interfaces and multiple plugs. Just like Lego, as long as the number of auxiliary robots is large enough, he can assemble any desired shape through pre-programming. And this is the derivative function of a large number of auxiliary robots, and its effect is no worse than the flow of violent soldiers. In some specific cases, this function is more deterrent than the scattered mechanical legions. Just like the scene right now, it's a good proof. A giant hand composed of millions of anti-gravity assistance robots. Not to mention grabbing a 1,000-ton vibranium mine, even heavier mountains can grab it, or blast it with one punch. Yes, the power is so terrifying. This is the qualitative change caused by the quantitative change. Seeing such a scene, T'Chaka was already stunned. I thought I could see this terrifying young man embarrassing. Now it seems that he is the Joker. With a bitter expression on his face, he had nothing to say. The National Defense Energy Barrier was easily broken, and an army of 100,000 people was like child's play in front of others. Now that even the tens of millions of tons of vibranium mine has been easily taken away by the other party, what else can he say? There is no choice but to surrender. A few minutes later, looking at the back of Locke leaving with the mighty mechanical legion, his heart was full of sighs. The back waves push the front waves, and the front waves die on the beach. This sentence is not wrong at all. It seems that I really no longer adapt to this world, old. It's time for T'Challa to take over, and it's time for him to enjoy his old age. Before vibranium was taken away, he was still very sad and heartbroken. But when the thing was determined to be taken away by Locke, his heart was calm. As the so-called common man is innocent and guilty, they Wakanda have always possessed vibranium, which is really not a good thing in the long run. After all, this thing is too precious. Keeping this thing on the body is no less than carrying a bomb. You never know when the enemy will target vibranium, much less when they will give you a stick. Just like now, before Locke appeared, he would never have imagined that they would almost wipe out the country because of vibranium. Now that this thing has been taken away, at least no one will care about it anymore, so there is one less threat. There is no way, he can only comfort himself like this now, otherwise what else can he do? Shield, on the sky carrier. Everyone gasped and looked at the pictures on the screen, all showing shock. In addition to being able to fight separately, this mechanical legion can actually be combined together, which is incredible. It's unbelievable to have formed such a terrifying giant hand in the sky. Is there really no bottleneck in this guy's technological ability? But I have to say, it's really cool. Men's romance is no more than that. By the way, what is the thing that the robotic arm is holding? Is it Wakanda's vibranium? It doesn't matter, it's possible for that guy to invade Wakanda so aggressively. I can't think of anything other than their vibranium. Tisk tisk tisk, this vibranium is like a hill, the value is unimaginable. That's vibranium that costs 10,000 knives per gram. Do you think the Rockefeller family will be short of money? This guy must have a bigger and more amazing purpose for getting so much vibranium. I really wonder what he wants to do. No matter what I do, I just hope not to be enemies with him, or we won't know how we will die. Agree. A group of people nodded silently, their views were surprisingly unanimous. Inside the office, Nick Fury was smoking a cigarette silently, spit after puff of cigarette rings out of his mouth. These smoke rings after another are like troubles in his heart, one less than one. Sir, it seems that our assessment of that guy is still a bit biased. This guy is not as inhuman as we previously thought. In this invasion of Wakanda, he did not harm a civilian, nor did he cause any casualties, he just took what he wanted. Hill agent stood in front of Nick Fury and analyzed it carefully. Hearing the Hill agent's words, Nick Fury's face was gloomy. So, we have to thank him. I didn't mean that, just thought, should you relax your threat assessment to Locke? A guy who starts a war for his own sake is a good guy just because he didn't cause casualties. It really answers that sentence. A good person needs thousands of merits to become a Buddha, and a bully just needs to put down the butcher's knife, and he can become a Buddha on the ground. This is really ridiculous, but the good and evil in this world are not so divided. At least not here. Nick Fury snuffed out the cigarette in his hand, got up and looked out the window. I saw a sea of clouds churning outside the window, the wind was howling, and it looked extremely uneasy. All of this is like the current world, with undercurrents surging and destined to be unstable. We should never let our guard down on Rock, the guy who can target Wakanda one day and us next time. Therefore, we must be ready at all times, and the battle plan for this guy must be arranged as soon as possible, so that we can live better. Nick Fury looked at the sea of clouds outside the window and said meaningfully. I understand. Hill Agent nodded, although there was still a lot to say in her heart, but in the end she chose to shut up. What will the future be like? None of them know. But unlike Nick Fury, she has a positive attitude towards the future, or rather Locke. For all of this, Locke naturally doesn't know. At this moment, he is in the study, his consciousness is silent in his own system. Congratulations to the host, participating and witnessing the Invasion of Wakanda event, reward 35 points. Because the Invasion of Wakanda event was actively created by the host, it is estimated that an additional 10 points will be awarded, for a total of 45 points. Note: the event created by the host itself needs to have a huge influence in order to be recognized and rewarded by the system. The reward points are determined by the event file size and the scope of influence, and there is no upper limit. Looking at the system prompt that suddenly appeared in front of him, Locke was stunned. He had no idea that he would be rewarded by the system inexplicably. You must know that according to the original rules of the system, only after he participates in or witnesses various major events in this world, he can get the system's points reward. But now it seems that his host can take the initiative to create some big events to earn points. This is very interesting. This is obviously to encourage him to do things in disguise. And it can't be done in a small way, it must be done in a big way, otherwise the system will not recognize it. Events such as his previous killing of Jin Bing and Pierce were not recognized by the system. So one can imagine how difficult it is for the system to make a big deal. No wonder the system did not introduce him to this function before. The system must have felt that he was not qualified to take the initiative to do things. Don't say it's a big thing, even if it's a small thing, it probably won't happen. If you are weak, you really have no human rights, and even the system will look down on you. This is no one else. Although it is very difficult to take the initiative to engage in major events, it is still the saying that something is better than nothing. And with his current strength, there should be no problem with another major event that is no less than an invasion of a country. This he has to go back and plan a good plan, and then reward points again. Isn't it beautiful? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look forward to it. Call out your own attribute information. Host: Locke. Technology world: Neil Mechanical age. Points: 65. A few days ago, he encountered the symbiote by chance and fought a riot, and finally gave the riot a second. Riot and Venom are also one of Marvel's big events, so after he killed the riot, he also got 10 points rewarded by the system. Although the points are few, it is better than nothing. Locke doesn't care much. After all, he has not yet reached the point where he has to rush to draw a new technological world. It's just a Neil Mechanical era mission, such as the construction of other members of the Yoba troop, the construction of humanoid mechas, and the construction of the outer space base, he has not yet completed. In this way, he is naturally not in a hurry. Before drawing the new world, he must have completed these goals first. Now that Vibranium's reserves are sufficient, the remaining goal is to expand the Yoba unit. Locke thought with interest. Communication officers as well as the enchanting and looks of the twin sisters appeared in my mind. Their beauty is completely different from the 3 Yoba members that Locke now has. As I said before, none of them are better, it's just a different style. But the experience is sure to be wonderful. Just when Locke was still secretly planning what happened next, his body suddenly trembled slightly, which was a normal overreaction of the body, as long as it was controlled a little. For example, stop and take a break, or change your posture, it is okay. So Locke pulled out the commander's sister who was squatting under the desk, and then adjusted his sitting posture. My commander sister, you just said that you came to the study to discuss the next plan with me. Is this how you discuss the plan? Locke shook his head and said with a half-smile. Giggle, who made you so charming, young master? I also want to discuss the plan with you, but the concubine can't do it. The commander's elder sister smiled charmingly. Immediately, as usual, she handed her back to Locke. The slender and beautiful legs habitually stretched out a long skirt with a high slit, the black silk suddenly revealed, and the scenery was extremely beautiful. Master, let's play the word-making game again. I use my body to become a, you use my body to compare. Year, the commander giggled as he habitually pressed his hands on the desk. Seeing this, Locke also laughed. Who doesn't know how to compose words? Play, you must play, the deeper you play, the better. Chapter 111. New York, in the Cliff Villa, the mustache man looked at the hologram in front of him seriously, his face was full of surprise. It's amazing that this guy has reached this level of technology. This mustache man is none other than Iron Man Tony Stark. And the picture he was looking at was exactly the scene of Locke's anti-gravity-assisted robot forming a giant mechanical arm. This is what just happened today. That kid invaded a country with this mechanical army and stole all of Wakanda's vibranium. Beside Tony Stark, Natasha Romanoff said with a complicated expression. For that young man, her biggest impression was that she was lawless, lustful, and even a little perverted. But now, the impression of him is undoubtedly a little more, that is, the madness of unscrupulous means to achieve his goals. He is simply an out-and-out lunatic. She never imagined that a 14-year-old boy would start a war against a sovereign country. It's unbelievable. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she would never have believed it. Just as she would never have believed it at first, it is the same reason that the kid can already do that. It's all beyond imagination. I used to think that I was talented enough and arrogant enough to be 853, but now I'm a bit embarrassed to compare with him. This guy's interpretation of the arrogance and lawlessness of genius is really in place. Hearing Natasha Romanoff's words, Tony Stark said with a solemn expression. There are sighs, admiration, dissatisfaction, and jealousy, which is very complicated. Now is not the time to praise him. The uncertainty factor of this guy is too high, and he is an extremely dangerous person. Mr. Nick Fury hopes you can join us in formulating a plan to deal with Locke's crimes, in case of emergency. Aiming at that guy's combat plan, the anti-Locke plan, this is a good idea. To be honest, I have been doing this kind of program all the time. I've done countless games with artificial intelligence. But guess what, Tony Stark picked up the red wine on the table, said with a smile, and came to the huge French window. Looking at the turbulent sea outside, there was no smile on his face, and what was replaced was a dignified, almost desperate. What happened? Natasha Romanoff asked curiously behind him. After substituting all the resources I can mobilize, the result of the deduction is failure, and the failure rate is 100%. He sighed and drank the remaining red wine in the glass, frowning tightly together, looking a little hideous. I don't know if it was caused by the red wine, or if he thought about the result of the deduction. Don't be so desperate, the resources you substitute are only what you can call. And we still have a lot of resources that you don't know. If you can join us, these resources will be used by you. When the time comes, the results may be different. Natasha Romanoff said meaningfully. Hearing Natasha Romanoff's words, Tony Stark's face showed interest. He turned to look at Natasha Romanoff, nodded silently, and said, "It's very tempting, I agree to join." Getting the results he wanted, Natasha Romanoff couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow, you will come to the base of S.H.I.E.L.D. There are several new partners who need to be known to you, and they are also part of the resources. Don't worry, I'll go, Tony Stark said, nodding. But at this moment, his face suddenly turned pale, and the whole person fell to the ground in great pain. Just looking at the blood vessels near his neck turned terrifying black, which was obviously a sign of poisoning. Seeing this, Natasha Romanoff said nothing, quickly took out a tube of potion from his waist, and plunged it into Tony Stark's body. In this way, Tony Stark's condition, which had been extremely painful, slowly improved. The palladium element in your body must be removed as soon as possible, or this thing will kill you sooner or later. Natasha Romanoff looked at Tony Stark with a serious look on his face. Hearing this, Tony Stark nodded silently. his face very complicated. I'm always looking for new elements to replace palladium. But so far, there is still no progress. I can only use the armor as much as possible now to reduce the operating power of the arc reactor so that I can have a little more time. But it's not a long-term solution, it's a real headache. Tony Stark stood up with Natasha Romanoff's help and sighed. To be able to make the self-confident him so lonely, one can imagine how difficult it is to find new elements. In his opinion, finding new elements is as difficult as defeating Locke. If you need any help, just tell me, and I'll make arrangements for you. Natasha Romanoff said. Science is not something that can be solved by many people, and no one can help me. Wait, this seems a bit absolute, maybe that guy can. Tony Stark seemed to think of something, his face became more complicated. The guy in his mouth was not referring to anyone else, it was the Locke they were still mentioning just now. Now that the 14-year-old has come to the front of himself in the field of science and technology, then he might really be able to help him. But he also joined the Avengers on his forefoot, ready to formulate an anti-Rock plan. He went to seek Locke's help on the back foot, and he always felt a little sorry in his heart. However, Natasha Romanoff seemed to see his hesitation and said meaningfully, if you can get help, it doesn't seem to matter who the object is, after all, 1 yard is 1 yard. This does not prevent the execution of our plan, what do you think? Natasha Romanoff's face showed a sly smile, very charming and evil. You're right, I do have a lot of questions for him to answer. Tony Stark muttered, a decision deep in his heart. Rockefeller Manor. In the discussion hall, the 3 members of Yoba's troops, as well as Dr. Stern, Ivan Vanke, and Lao Mo, were all present. Have the modular space base components been built? Locke looked at Lao Mo with some surprise. The project of the outer space base has always been in progress, and the main person in charge of the project is Lao Mo. He only provides technical support, such as the overall design of the base, the design of weapons, the design of power units, etc., all of which are done by him. And Lao Mo is mainly responsible for the realization and realizes all his designs. This is simple to say, but the process is extremely complicated, and there are too many things involved. Human, material and financial resources are a terrifying consumption. At present, the entire project has only passed 3 months. But Lao Mo told him that he was almost finished, which naturally surprised him. Yes, most of the parts have been assembled, now only a small part is left. 0. However, according to our plan, in about a week, we can enter the launch phase. Actually even I was quite surprised that such a big project took so little time and was almost completed. Thanks to Ivan Vanke, the automatic mechanical armor created by this kid is really useful. No whining, no complaining, never shouting tired, working 24 hours a day, 24/7. Just rely on the reactor in the chest to release energy, it is simply the best labor force in the world. Lao Momin said with praise. Obviously, he is very satisfied with the automatic armor created by the mechanical genius Ivan Vanke. But then again, if you work 24 hours a day, and you can't complain, or cry when you're tired, there are only robots. As long as it is replaced by a normal human labor force, it will probably be exhausted. It has to be said that the squeeze from capital is really terrifying. Fortunately, today's Locke is no longer a labor force, but a capital that squeezes labor force. This is really cool to think about. Ivan Vanke, you have done a good job, I will not miss you for the reward you deserve. Locke nodded with satisfaction. It was a wise choice to recruit Ivan Vanke into his team. I don't need a reward, young master, you just give me the opportunity to kill Tony Stark. Ivan Vanke said with a murderous face. Locke nodded silently, talking about Tony Stark. The timeline of Iron Man 2 seems to be coming. Maybe it's time for Ivan Vanke to go out and stir up the storm. After all, this is also a big event, and he is now involved in it. So once this event occurs, he will be able to get system points again. After thinking for a while, nodded, and said, from tomorrow onwards, you will go to live in that old boy Hanmer's place, and he will provide you with all the help you need. But I still say that, the opportunity can be given to you, but whether you can handle him depends on your ability. Is there any problem? No problem, that's what I originally thought, revenge is something that only makes sense if you do it yourself. Ivan Vanke said coldly, his eyes full of murderous intent. Obviously, he has endured for a long time, and now is the time to take action. Well, you can go to find Hammer now. Locke nodded and said, "Thank you, young master." With permission, Ivan Vanki walked out quickly without any hesitation. His eyes moved to Lao Mo's body. "The matter of the outer space base, you continue to watch, and when the day it can be launched, I will celebrate for you." Locke looked at Lao Mo and said, "Well, when the time comes, the old man will fight 10. Lao Mo said suddenly, with a wretched smile on his face. "Your uncle, I think you want to be beaten 10 times by me." Locke didn't expect that this old man would show off at this time. It was simply winking at the commander beside him. The commander nodded with a smile, took a stride, and pushed Lao Mo's body with a palm. Immediately, Lao Mo rolled directly from the conference hall to the outside garden like a ball. However, Lao Mo was naturally fine. Not only was he fine, but his face was full of a lewd smile. "Don't let 10 hits, like the young master, 3 hits at a time are okay." Locke, after Lao Mo left a rude remark, he ran away as if he did not want to be slapped by the commander again. Although his body has been strengthened again by Locke, the old Mo is now in his 80s. But his appearance looked like a middle-aged man in his 50s, and his body was quite tough. Coupled with the combat experience he has accumulated over the years, his strength is comparable to that of Captain America. But that is only compared with Captain America, and the commander around Locke has also undergone the second strengthening. Moreover, the strengthening agent is an enhanced super soldier serum. So whether it is strength, explosiveness, or reaction speed, he can't compare with the commander, a woman. In this way, he naturally doesn't want to seek abuse, and it is better to sneak away obediently. Listening to Lao Mo's words of tigers and wolves before he left, the commander's face turned crimson, and he couldn't help thinking of the days and nights with Master Locke. And the reason why she will carry out the second strengthening is precisely because every day and night, she is the first to lose. After all, the other two are the existences with permanent energy furnaces installed, and there is no solution in terms of physical strength. And she can only rely on her superb skills to obtain a slight advantage. However, after Locke opened up, she still couldn't resist this advantage, and she was the first to end the battle every time. As time went on and the number of times increased, she felt a little frustrated. So, just the night before yesterday, she mentioned this desire to become stronger to Locke. And Locke, who has come here, feels the same way. After all, when he was still an ordinary person, he was plagued by physical exhaustion, and he was always devastated by Miss 2B, and he was not her opponent at all. So for the commander's request, he injected her with the enhanced super soldier serum without the slightest hesitation. In this way, there is also the commander's elder sister who has greatly improved in strength. The current commander's physical fitness is comparable to that of Hulk in a normal state. Whether it is strength and speed or self-healing ability, he can be called a pervert. And the skyrocketing physical fitness has naturally also made her melee strength improve by leaps and bounds. Although in terms of physical strength, she is still not a 2-2 opponent. But she is not bad, and with her skillful skills, she can even hold Locke faster than 2B-A2. The speed of breaking out Locke's equipment is faster and fiercer. There is no way, who made her Oni-san. And their young master, the favorite, happens to be Oni-san. Touching his beautiful face, which was a little hot, the commander returned to Locke's side unhurriedly. Between the beautiful eyes, they stared at Locke, and there was greed in his eyes. Before the injection of the enhanced super soldier serum, her young master had solemnly explained it to him. Enhanced super soldier serum will greatly enhance her traits. Similar to the situation where good people become better and bad people become worse. However, her characteristics are not good or bad at all, but her love for Locke. After all, at the very beginning of her creation, she was implanted with the instruction that she was only loyal to the Creator in this life. And with her successful birth, this command has become her only trait. At this moment, with the strengthening of the enhanced super soldier serum, this trait has been infinitely amplified to the extreme. So that when she saw Locke, her body often couldn't help but agitate. Just like Hulk's transformation, it was difficult to control. For this situation, Locke has thought about it, has thought of a solution, and has taken action. Feeling the fiery gaze of the commander's elder sister around him, Locke smiled slightly and pulled her to his side. What's the matter, do you want to transform again? Nodding and nodding, the commander's face showed shyness. I see, first gear, Locke said with a smile, looking at the commander beside him. Hearing this, the commander was taken aback for a moment, and his face turned even redder. Lying in Locke's ear, he said softly, "Don't be ridiculous, there are still people." "It's okay, no one knows." While talking, Locke consciously controlled the artificial intelligence 9S, turned on an unknown switch, and adjusted it to a state. Immediately, the chair the commander's sister sat on seemed to have turned into an electric chair, which made her fidgeting and seemed uncomfortable no matter how she sat. Looking at his strange appearance, Miss 2B and Miss A2 looked curious and stunned. "Sister Commander, what's the matter with you, are you not feeling well?" "No, nothing, it's just that I didn't sleep well last night. I'll go back to my room to make up for it," the commander's sister said, stood up with difficulty, step by step, tremblingly walked into her room. Seeing her like this, Miss 2B's big eyes rolled up. Immediately, the corners of his mouth turned up slightly, revealing a wicked smile. "Master, I'm going to take care of the commander's sister, she looks like she's a little sick." After all, without waiting for Locke to agree, she directly broke into the commander's elder sister's room. It didn't take long for a strange scream came from the room, as well as the silver bell-like laughter of Miss 2B. Hearing such a movement, Locke smiled and didn't pay much attention to it. His eyes moved to Dr. Stern. "Dr. Stern, I heard that you were researching a new type of Hulk serum recently. Is there any new progress?" Locke asked curiously, his deep eyes seemed to want to see through Dr. Stern. According to the monitoring information sent back by the artificial intelligence 9s, the Dr. Stern in front of him has been researching the brand new Hulk serum recently, so he is naturally very curious. As the only existence in the world whose IQ surpasses the sky. For Dr. Stern, his heart has always been vigilant. If the big head in front of him keeps himself safe, it is a sharp sword in his hand. But if he has bad intentions, it is a huge threat, a bomb placed by his side. There will always be an explosion, so he will let the artificial intelligence 9s monitor this guy in real time. Report to yourself if you notice a special situation. He is the only one who can enjoy this kind of treatment in the entire base. Hearing Locke's question, Dr. Stern's face was full of excitement. "Master, do you already know? I plan to give you a big surprise after I make it." Dr. Stern's character of broken mouth showed again, and said eloquently. "Oh, so, can you tell me about this surprise in advance?" Locke looked at Dr. Stern meaningfully and said, "Definitely, if you can't wait, Master, I can definitely tell you in advance, but I'm afraid your little heart can't bear it. If you get too excited and something goes wrong at that time, that's not good." "I said so, young master, do you still want to hear this big surprise?" Listen, Dr. Stern said, looking at Locke curiously. "Your uncle's, A2 cut off his tongue for me." Locke was speechless, he had never seen such a noisy person when he was so old. Chattering and chattering, he suspects that Dr. Stern is the reincarnation of Tang Sang. No wonder Miss 2B beat him like a pig's head back then, but now he doesn't just want him to be a pig's head. I wanted to pull out his tongue and tie him into a dead end. Yes, upon hearing Locke's words, Miss A2 immediately wanted to do it. Seeing this, Dr. Stern was immediately frightened, and quickly begged for mercy, saying, "Master, I will focus on saying that I plan to create a brand new medicine that is 10,000 times more powerful than Hulk serum." Hearing Dr. Stern's words, Locke's face could not help showing a look of shock, and quickly stopped Miss A2. A strengthening potion that is 10,000 times more powerful than Hulk serum. Locke's eyes were full of surprise. Because in his impression, isn't this thing the Sentry serum? It is the one that has the chance to shift the phase of the atoms in the body after drinking it, creating an entrance similar to a door, connecting a strange single universe, so that Locke is equivalent to the anti-sky potion of the explosion energy of 1 million fixed stars. He remembered that the person who created this potion was an unknown professor, and he didn't even remember the name of the other party. Could it be that this unknown professor is the Dr. Stern in front of him? But this shouldn't be possible. One question after another constantly popped up in his mind, and he couldn't figure it out for a while. However, according to his guess, Dr. Stern is unlikely to be the professor who made the Sentry Serum. This is most likely just a coincidence. After all, it is reasonable for Dr. Stern, whose IQ has increased 1,000 times, to suddenly have such a crazy pursuit. Because only by making a brand new serum that surpasses the Hulk serum 10,000 times, can he show his super IQ. However, according to his understanding, the reason why Sentry Pharmacy is called Sentry Pharmacy is not because it was originally called this name. It was because Reynolds, the reclusive child who drank the potion, obtained the power of 1,000,000 fixed star explosions in a near impossible probability, making him the Superman in the Marvel world. And replace himself with the number Sentry, which means the man on guard on this planet, the meaning of Asgardian. Therefore, this medicine was given a name only after the results were obtained. This sequence is very important, because this means that it is not someone who will become a Sentry after drinking the potion. It is very likely that it will become another kind of heaven-defying existence, or die directly. In the original Marvel world, it was also clearly confirmed that the Sentry potion would only be effective on Reynolds himself, and only for the first time. So if you want to recreate the Sentry Serum, Rao is a monster like Dr. Stern, and it is estimated that it is impossible to do it. After all he can control is the medicine originally, and there is another factor, Reynolds, that he cannot control. But then again, if one day Dr. Stern really develops this brand new drug that surpasses the Hulk serum by 1,000 times, even if the user cannot be turned into a Sentry, there is definitely a great chance to turn it into another absolutely terrifying existence. At that time, if I use the strengthening analysis function of the system myself, will I be able to create a more powerful medicine? Thinking of this, Rao Shi couldn't help but get excited. What's going on? Dr. Stern, this chatter looks quite cute now. Work hard, I'm looking forward to your success, and I'll make you famous in the world. Locke looked at Dr. Stern and said that you must do your best. I don't know why, as a Dr. Sten with a demonic IQ, he has an unimaginable paranoia in the pursuit of fame. It is very likely that in the first half of his life, because he has been anonymous, the matter of becoming famous has become an obsession in his heart. So that after being strengthened by the Hulk serum, this trait of his was infinitely magnified. This made Dr. Stern what he is now. But it's good to think about it. If you have obsessions, you have weaknesses, and if you have weaknesses, you can't be invincible. Since he is invincible, Locke can naturally use his weakness to control Dr. Stern in front of him, or to be more precise, to guide him in the direction he wants. He is looking forward to the future that Dr. Stern can bring to him. By the way, in order not to make you think that I am joking with you and deceiving you, you can watch the news tonight, and I'll spend a lot of money on the big screen in Times Square, New York, to give you a marquee. It is said that Dr. Stern is invincible in wisdom and bravery, and the cattle criticize. What do you think? Hearing Locke's words, Dr. Stern's face was full of excitement. Master, really? That's great, I'll be waiting for you tonight. Dr. Stern said excitedly. Well, then you can go back now and continue to work hard on your research, and I will let you know at night. Locke said with a smile. Spend a little money to make your subordinates happy, why not do this kind of thing? It has to be said that he has pinched Dr. Stern. Definitely, it's hard to say whether Dr. Stern's current performance is real, or whether he pretended it. But it doesn't matter, until there is not enough evidence to prove that Dr. Stern has a different opinion on himself, he is happy to maintain the current situation. Even in acting, he is willing to accompany him. After all, a guy who may bring him enough benefits in the future, he is willing to take this risk. It is the so-called wealth and risk-seeking, and this is what it means. It's not his style to take any risk at all. After all, he is called a lunatic existence. If it's not crazy, it's really unreasonable. By the way, young master, what does newbie mean? Dr. Stern suddenly turned around and asked curiously when he was halfway there. It's another way of saying that wisdom and courage are invincible. Anyway, it's very powerful. Locke said. Understood, thank you young master, I'm busy. Dr. Stern, who was rarely speechless, turned around and left. Looking at the back of him leaving, the smile on Locke's face slowly disappeared. Nines, is there anything unusual? Master, the brain waves are normal, the heart rate is normal, and the body movements are normal compared to normal, there is no abnormality. However, before he left, his chatty characteristics did not play, but it should be related to your previous intimidation, young master. So, do you need to record the datasheet for later analysis? The electronic synthesis sound of artificial intelligence 9 sounded in Locke's mind. As mentioned earlier, Locke has always been extremely vigilant about this highly intelligent Dr. Stern. Therefore, the headband worn on Dr. Stern's head to restrain his telepathy ability also has the function of monitoring the state of the body. It is precisely because of this function that Nines is able to grasp the situation of Dr. Stern in real time and provide timely feedback to Locke. He nodded silently. Record it. A daily report is generated every day, and a weekly report is generated every week, and I will check it anytime. Understood. Data logging. Logging completed. In fact, if Locke really wants to know whether Dr. Stern has a different mind, he can use his powerful telepathy ability to force his thoughts. However, Dr. Stern, who also has telepathy ability, will naturally notice it at the first time. At that time, the relationship between the two will inevitably become opposite, and what was originally nothing will turn into something. This is not the situation that Locke wants to see. He also expects Dr. Stern to create for himself that kind of anti-sky medicine that surpasses the Hulk serum 10,000 times. How can you get into trouble over such a trivial matter? It would seem too petty. It is the best way to observe secretly and let Nines slowly analyze its behavior pattern. The key is to be stable. Crazy with stability, thick with thin, fast with slow, this is easy to get out. This is the limit. Raising his hand and looking at his watch, it has been 5 minutes since the commander's sister entered the room. Turn to gear 2, Locke said to himself. Just as his voice fell, the commander's scream came from the room. Slowly getting up, Locke held Miss A2's slender hand like a verdant green with a wretched smile on his face. It's almost time. The commander's sister at this time should be about to reach the limit of what she can bear. Let's go make up a knife together. Master, this is not very good. It's broad daylight now, Miss A2 said with a rosy look on her icy face. What's wrong with the day? Is there a rule that the battle must take place at night? Locke gently pulled Miss A2 into his arms, and gently squeezed A2's chin with one hand. There are no rules, but isn't it customary? Who agreed? Look, you can't tell. So this agreement is not established. Now let's reappoint. The battle time is not limited. After all, Locke took Miss A2 and walked towards the room. In the room, 2 beautiful flowers, Miss 2B and Commander, are budding. New Mexico. In an endless hilly land, there is only one Western cowboy tavern, standing in the long red earth. This is the western frontier, and there is only one road that is not too dilapidated. Only some truck drivers drive past here on weekdays, and this pub was opened for them, and all they earn is their money. Because the surrounding area is rarely uninhabited, it loses the popularity of urban life, but it has more magnificent nature. In particular, there is no light pollution in the city, so you can see the starry sky clearly, very beautiful. In the grass near the tavern, the bearded man who was peeing everywhere looked up at the starry sky. With a look of enjoyment on his face, after urinating, he plans to go back to the tavern to continue drinking. Anyway, his delivery task has been completed, and the rest of the time is his own. Hey, what is that? Meteor. At this moment, the bearded man muttered to himself with a look of astonishment. Because at this moment, there is a red fire rapidly falling from the distant sky. His first reaction was that this thing should be a meteor. So, he slowly closed his eyes. Hopefully I can extend 10 centimeters, amen. A very realistic wish, but a little greedy. The red meteor seemed very dissatisfied with his wish. Then, he galloped in the direction of the bearded man. Immediately, before his man could react, the red meteor smashed heavily in front of him more than 10 meters away. The terrifying impact left a huge amount of deep crater on the ground. The shockwave that erupted from the impact blew the bearded man upside down in an instant. In the end, it smashed heavily on the wall of the tavern, splashing blood. Apparently, his wine could no longer be drunk. As for the wish to extend by 10 centimeters, the red meteor was given to him. After all, after reincarnation, how many centimeters can grow depends on his own ability. What happened? What? The huge amounts of movement immediately caught the attention of other customers in the tavern. A group of people came out, and after making a sound of surprise, the loudest screams were heard. It is because the death of the bearded man is a bit tragic. Before dying, he still held his own. It's really, really short. What is that? Looking away from the shortness of the bearded man, everyone discovered that there were huge amounts of deep pits more than 10 meters away. A group of people walked over cautiously. A look of astonishment appeared on the faces of the people standing on the edge of the deep pit. Is it a hammer? New York, Queens, among the luxury villas of Ruoman Osborne. A young man fell drunk on the sofa in the luxurious living room. Mouth kept cursing. Spider-Man, I'm going to kill you to avenge my father. As the young man spoke, he waved the wine bottle indiscriminately, and the wine bottle hit the ground heavily. Broken, shards of glass mixed with red wine scattered all over the place. Lying in the luxurious living room of Osborne's house is obviously not an ordinary person. Yes, this young man is none other than Ruoman Osborne's son, Harry Osborne. The guy who killed your father wasn't just a Spider-Man, there was another nasty guy. Just at this moment Qian Li Hao, a cold laughter came from outside the window. Who? The sudden sound made Harry wake up half of his alcoholism. At this moment, a slender woman with a hood walked in from the window with steps. Looking at this woman, Harry's face showed a look of surprise. This woman is not ordinary. This is Harry's first reaction to this unrecognizable woman in front of him. Because it is impossible for ordinary women to enter his heavily guarded villa. You don't need to know who I am, you just need to know that I am here to help you. The woman said. Suddenly a stride rushed in front of Harry, and then a needle pierced Harry's body. This thing is a gift for you, so get a good night's sleep. After tomorrow, Spider-Man is nothing to be afraid of. But like I said, it wasn't just a Spider-Man who killed your father, there was another nasty guy. You must remember. Cluck, a bell-like laughter came from the woman's mouth. Harry only felt extreme pain in his body, splitting headache, eyelids fighting, and finally fell into a coma. Looking at Harry who was asleep, the woman smiled. Pawn number 1, the startup is successful. After that, the woman jumped up and disappeared into the dark night sky like a ghost. At night, in the study, as before, Locke sat quietly at the desk. This time, there was neither the commander who brought in the tea and the water, nor the Miss 2B who was hiding under the table. Because they went shopping today. Woman, nature. Without the pressure of women, Locke draws the knife very fast, and his thoughts are also very agile. Make a habit of listing your next plans in your notebook. Unmanned mechanical armor, really. The adamantium formula, the creation of 1 million anti-gravity auxiliary robot army, and the acquisition of massive vibranium, etc., have all been fully realized. Now all that is left is the growth of the Yoba army, the construction of humanoid mechas, and the outer space base. After thinking about it, Locke continued to list these 3 plans. Plan 1. Continued expansion of the Yoba force. Yoba Correspondent 60, Yoba Correspondent 210, the red-haired twins, made by Deborah and Popolo. Plan 2. The creation of humanoid mecha. Plan 3. The establishment of an outer space base. After writing these plans, Locke held his cheek with one hand, like a student who was still taking an exam, his brain was running fast. Envision plans for a more distant future. After a long time, he started writing again. Swish wrote down other plans for the future on paper. No, to be more precise, it is his expectations for the future. This is no longer a plan list, but a wish list. With a smile, he closed the notebook and gently placed it on the bookshelf. Just then, there was a knock on the door of the study. Locke was stunned for a moment, his 3 ladies came back so soon. Haven't been out for 2 hours yet. Just when she was still thinking about it, a thick voice came from outside the door. Master, are you asleep? It was the voice of the housekeeper, Lao Mo. If you are blind, you should retire early and return home. This is the study room. Locke helplessly looked at Lao Mo who walked in with a wretched smile and said. Old Mo, who was bald and had big white teeth, came to Locke's table with a smile and sniffed. Master, you had a very simple life today. It's not like you. Can't you? Do you want to be safe? If you want, you don't need to be so troublesome. You can tell me directly, and I can satisfy you immediately. Hey, just kidding, just wanting to liven up the atmosphere. You don't need to be active in the atmosphere. You are usually active enough. Now I just need to be quiet. Locke said angrily. Hee, I understand, I came in just to tell you a few things. Ha, say it. The first thing is that the high school student you asked me to observe secretly has been a little unusual in the past 2 days. Old Mo said after a while. Abnormal, how to say, I have been observing him secretly for more than a month. In my impression, he is a very shy little guy who is usually very low-key. But in recent days, he has become a little different, he has become a lot more high-profile, and he even dances in public on the street. Dancing. Locke looked shocked. The guy that Locke had Mo kept secretly watching was none other than Spider-Man Pete Parker. As a teenage superhero not much older than him, Rock has a crush on Spider-Man. Among the many superheroes, the one with the most favorable impression. Because of his young age, he is more pure and kind, which can be seen from the incident of the battle against Green Goblin. In order not to let his good friend Harry lose his father, he insists on saving Green Goblin. He even gave his back to Green Goblin, such a noble and fearless spirit, he asked himself that he couldn't do it. He is still very self-aware of himself, he is not a superhero material. He is selfish and a little crazy, he will do anything to achieve his goals. And the reason why he has such characteristics now, he has also reflected on himself in private. And the reason for going deeper, BACB, is actually very simple, because he is a person who has died once. Therefore, he cherishes life more than others, and hopes to live longer and better in this life. And as the saying goes, good people don't live long, and disasters are left for thousands of years. He is more inclined to be a scourge than to be a short-lived good guy. Definitely, his so-called scourge isn't some kind of bottomless evil being. It is a person who has his own bottom line and can live for himself as he wants. Now he is moving towards this goal step by step. All existences that prevent him from achieving this goal will be listed as enemies by her. In the face of the enemy, there is no so-called right and wrong, only victory or defeat. And in order to win, he can naturally do whatever he can, even if he becomes the so-called villain. Slaughtered the Golden Mansion, slaughtered Pierce, and invaded Wakanda. So he is very different from Spider-Man. But although it is different, it does not prevent him from admiring Spider-Man. As for why he was looking for Lao Moaojong to observe him, the reason is very simple, points. Because the Spider-Man in this world is very different from the Spider-Man in the main Marvel universe that he knows. So for the big events that happen to Spider-Man, he can't predict as accurately as other superheroes. And he himself didn't want to miss the opportunity to earn points, so he could only use this earthly method for tracking and monitoring. Sure enough, he was really betting right. In this little Spider-Man, something really happened. And if he guessed right, this should be the storyline of Maguire's version of Spider-Man vs. Venom. After thinking about it, a smile appeared on his face, and it seemed that he was able to get some points again. Now, as long as he accumulates 35 points, he can trigger the lucky draw again. And as long as the humanoid mecha is completed, he can directly extract all the technologies of the entire technological world. So, thinking about it is really a little excited. Yes, it's just dancing, and that's all. The key dance is extraordinarily irritating, I can't bear to look directly at it. As if thinking of something, Lao Mo's fist clenched tightly. Apparently, Pete Parker's dance caused unimaginable chemical damage to Mo. Well, I see, Parker sighed, you don't have to follow for the time being, I'll let others follow. Locke tapped his fingers lightly on the table, and said after thinking for a while. I understand. Lao Mo nodded. Besides the Spider-Man thing, there's another interesting thing. Last night, in New Mexico, a hammer suddenly fell from the sky. And this hammer is extremely heavy, and now many people are gathering there to hold a hammer drawing contest. Hammer. It's really getting more and more interesting, it seems that our hammer god is coming. That being the case, this time, let's start with Thor's Mjolnir. There was a playful smile on Locke's face, looking very evil. The hammer that fell from the sky and fell to the ground, and then showed no signs of damage. Locke can't really think of anything other than Thor's Mjolnir. And according to the development of the timeline, it is time for Thor to appear. That is the case, Locke will naturally have to get involved. After all, this is also a big event, and it can be a lot of points for Locke. But before he gets involved in such big events, it's time for his Yoba Corp's communications officer to show up. After sending Lao Mo away, Looking at his watch, Locke nodded silently. The communication officer training project has ended, it's time to wake her up. When thinking like this, Locke directly entered his underground laboratory. Underground laboratory. In the two huge cultivation warehouses, two tall, slender, and concave convex beautiful bodies are quietly suspended. The appearance of the two bodies is different, but one thing is the same, that is, they are all blonde hair, which is the same as the commander's sister. Definitely, it's not exactly the same. Among them, 60 has long blonde hair, with two long ponytail braids at the back. It looks very cute, or more precisely, it is beautiful and cute. On the other hand, 21 has short blonde hair, and his temperament is not as cute as 60's, but he looks very dignified and stable, giving people the feeling of being a big sister next door. Yes, the communication officer 60 is a cute little girl, and the communication officer 210 is the big sister next door, two completely different styles, but both are extremely beautiful. Looking at the two communication officers in front of him, Locke was secretly excited, and he was still lacking in activating the experience of the two people at the same time. So today's activation task this time should be very interesting, and it is estimated that it will be particularly tiring. For both bodies, Locke uses the dual application mode of Vibranium plus Adamantium. The so-called dual application means that Adamantium is mainly used for attack, and Vibranium is mainly used for defense. The Adamantium particles are mainly integrated on the fists and soles of the two communication officers, as well as on the heads. Because these three places are the main parts of the attack, punches, kicks, and headbutts, these are the three. The positioning is very accurate, and there is no extra waste. After all, the weight of adamantium is much higher than that of vibranium, so it would be somewhat inconvenient to use adamantium all over the body. This point, he has experienced from the body of Miss A2. Miss A2 is particularly heavy. According to the theorem that the greater the mass, the greater the inertia, so among the three of 2B, Commander, and A2. Miss A2 has the strongest sense of blow, the strongest sense of impact, and the one who dares to exert his strength the most. But girls, it's better to be a little lighter, so that it is easier to hold. In addition to the application of two ultra-rare metals, Locke also added his own optimized Hulk serum to them. The so-called optimized Hulk serum was researched by him during this time. Reduced the probability of Hulk serum body mutation, but also reduced the strengthening effect of serum. Even so, the optimized Hulk serum is stronger than the previous enhanced Super Soldier serum. So far, apart from the Mad God potion, it is the most excellent potion. Anyway, the two communications officers will become his two wives, and he will naturally not be stingy in this regard. The money spent cannot be saved at all, so the permanent energy stove must also be indispensable. After applying these 4 items to the two communications officers, Locke couldn't wait to activate them. After inputting a secret command on the display of the training chamber, the activation program officially started. Activation program is starting. The memory import is successful, the emotion module is successfully generated, and the personality emotion generation is completed. In the physical structure examination, everything is normal, and the physical function test is in progress. The test is completed. The result: the body contains adamantium particles plus vibranium particles, and has the function of covering the vibranium armor and opening the adamantium attack form. And has an almost undead body, able to repair any injury to the body in an instant. The muscle strength is abnormally strong. The program cannot detect the strength temporarily, and the strength is unknown. Active genetic layers were found, containing slight gamma-ray components. In the case of extreme anger, it can explode with destructive power beyond the normal period. The wake-up procedure is starting, the startup is successful, and it is about to wake up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Listening to the continuous sound of the electronic synthesis sound, Locke nodded with satisfaction. Slightly different from the other Yoba Corps members, he added adamantium attack form to the two communications officers. The so-called attack form refers to the part where adamantium is injected and has the ability of shapeshifting. For example, their hands can be turned into various cold weapons according to their own consciousness. Like daggers, axes, knives, hammers, etc. In their memory bank, Locke entered hundreds of weapon forms for them. As long as they want, they can change in an instant, which is very convenient. The reason for this transformation is that the future work of the communications officer will be relatively complex. They must be able to adapt to espionage and reconnaissance work in different scenarios, so such a change is very necessary in Locke's view. In addition to the attack form, the bodies of the two communications officers, like Miss A2, also possess gamma rays. But the content is much less. This should be related to Locke's optimized Hulk serum. After all, you can't have both. If Locke wants the strengthening process to be relatively stable, the strengthening effect will inevitably be reduced to a certain extent, which is very normal. And because of the reduction of the strengthening effect, the gamma ray components in the two people's bodies are relatively much less. In this way, there is no attribute that Miss A2 will continuously improve her strength because of anger. However, in the case of extreme anger, the communication officer can also break out the destructive power beyond the normal period, which is enough. Following the completion of the activation program, the culture medium is emptied as expected. The two pairs of beautiful eyes opened at the same time, and a charming smile appeared on the beautiful faces of 60 and 210 at the same time. The door of the training warehouse slowly opened, and two tall and slim figures walked out of it with gentle steps and appeared in front of Locke. Giggle, Creator, you are so handsome. Please take care of me when we meet for the first time. 60, who looked like a cute little girl, spoke first. Just like her appearance, 60's character should also look like a cute little girl, it's really the same. Creator, I found your change. According to the second rule of the robot rules, we need to automatically meet the needs of the creator. The 210 communications officer looked at Locke seriously and said. Compared with 60, Miss 210 is dignified and serious, and seems to be very responsible. Saying that, he took the initiative to grab Locke's hand, and then gently pulled himself into Locke's arms. Locke, pull yourself, but it's okay. He remembered that the last time he used this trick was Miss 2B. But I didn't expect that Miss 210 communication officer also knew how to use it. Cuckoo, yes, the creator, discovering needs and satisfying them is what we must do. By the way, creator, let's take a photo together. It's just a record of this beautiful moment. The cute and lively 60 took a catwalk, and a tiny miniature anti-gravity reconnaissance machine flying insect flew out of her palm. Then she came to Locke and squatted down slowly. Immediately afterwards, the sound of Locke gasping for air was heard in the laboratory. Nima, even taking pictures at this time, the hobby of 60 is really a bit wild. A few hours later, in the study, Locke sat at the desk with a headache. In front of him, his 5 Yokoba members stood side by side. They are of different heights and lows, but they are surprisingly consistent in terms of choppy waves. There were huge mountains, and he felt a little breathless looking at them. Involuntarily, a circle yoga diagram appeared in my mind. Suddenly, a wretched smile appeared on his face. Maybe one day, I can have a circle yoga party myself. Thinking of that scene, Locke couldn't help but get a little excited. But before he could be happy for too long, a cold snort rang out. So, we just went out for a walk, and you gave us 2 more sisters. Miss 2B frowned slightly, a trace of dissatisfaction flashing in her eyes. She still vaguely remembers the days when the creator was only hers a few months ago. What a beautiful day it was. There will never be anyone interrupting in class, and the progress of homework tutoring is also controlled by oneself. It will not be like now. Sometimes because of the next teacher's class, I am forced to speed up my progress, and the involution is quite serious. You listen to my sophistry. Bah, it's an explanation. Building the Yoba army was originally planned, so is there a problem with this? There's definitely no problem in building the Yokoba army, but young master, but what we're talking about doesn't seem to have anything to do with building the Yokoba army, right? The commander looked at Locke with a smile and said. Yes, we have a clear curriculum plan. What day and what class will be taught, but it is clearly written. Young master, if you do this now, it will disrupt our original plan. Miss 2B pouted and said. Quote, class schedule. What class schedule? Isn't our class time random? Isn't the class location also random? That's a random behavior in our conscious planning. In fact, there is a plan. Miss 2B is a bit arrogant. Quote question mark quote. Locke, what the hell are you talking about? Forget it, let's just say what you want to do. Locke said speechlessly. It's very simple. Set things right, revise the original plan, and facilitate the next plan. Saying that, the commander's elder sister gave the order to leave temporarily to the two communication officer elder sisters beside her. Master, in view of your reckless behavior just now, plus the addition of the two communication officers, it is necessary for us to adjust the next course plan, so let's start now. While speaking, the commander walked around the desk and came to Locke, then bent down and looked at Locke. A charming smile appears, and a new course begins. At night in Queens, New York, the lights are bright, and the colorful neon lights hang in the air like a ribbon. How beautiful. Is this the creator's world? It's really beautiful. It would be great if the creator was here, so that people might be able to take pictures with the creator along with the beautiful night scene. Above a tall building, a woman with long blonde hair and a dragon king's ponytail wearing a black silk mask, smiled grimly. Not far in front of her, a reconnaissance mechanical flying insect constantly took pictures of her beautiful figure. As a beautiful little prince, under such a beautiful scenery, how can you not record a beautiful life? The slender and white long legs swayed rhythmically on the edge of the balcony of the building, looking very happy. This woman is none other than the communications officer 60 that Locke had just created. And at this moment she is carrying out the first task in her life. This task is very simple. Instead of Lao Mo, continue to monitor Pete Parker, keep abreast of his dynamics, report abnormal situations in time, and wait for the order of the creator. Compared with the outdated manual monitoring method, the 60's monitoring method is much more advanced. She can release multiple reconnaissance mechanical flying insects at the same time for long-distance monitoring and exploration. And through the visual system of these flying insects, she can clearly see the every move of the monitored objects. Combined with the behavior pattern analysis of artificial intelligence 9S, anomalies can be found in an instant. Its monitoring methods are many times better than Lao Mo's. In this world, people who can do this can be counted with one hand. At this moment, although she was leisurely watching the scenery on the top floor of the building, she could clearly see the movement on Pete Parker's side. It's okay to fish for work, but it's okay. Cute Xiaogongju 60. At Machinery Demon King, young master, do you see how beautiful this photo I took? Miss 60 sent the photo she just took to the joint combat group of Yoba's girlfriends established by I-9s, and asked with a smile. This group was established by the commander's sister after Locke's approval. They are able to easily connect through their own consciousness, allowing for real-time communication over long distances. It has the same purpose as the popular chat group, but the function is much stronger. No need to use communication tools, one idea can go online directly. It is very beautiful. Now this group of best friends is the best place for a group of Yoba members to chat for entertainment. After all, here, they can say whatever they want and send whatever they want. All kinds of flirtatious and ambiguous pictures are flying in the group, and they have not been reviewed yet, which is absolutely amazing. And Locke, who was forced to join it, once suspected that he had entered some communication group after a day of information bombardment. He could never have imagined what kind of deviations occurred in the process of generating the emotional system of the 5 Yokoba young sisters that he had created, and why all of them had the attributes of an old driver. Does this thing have a cellular inheritance? Shaking his head with a smile, Locke silently replied a message. The scenery is beautiful, and the people are even more beautiful. But please don't touch the fish during working hours. Locke is the leader of this joint operation group, and he is also the target of the joint operation of the 5 Yoba troops. The combat target and the combat target are in the same group, but it's okay. Locke was embarrassed to expose them. What the hell is a joint battle group? It's obviously a friendship exchange group. Impressed, Locke's nickname is the Mechanical Devil. In fact, at the beginning, the ladies suggested that he use the nickname Creator. However, Locke always felt that the sense of class of this nickname was too strong. At present, the way he gets along with his young ladies and sisters is not like the ancient emperors, where men are superior to women. After all, what age is this, and it is really boring to do this old way. The way they get along is more like a good friend who can communicate with each other without any burden. So they feel equal to each other, but they themselves will absolutely obey Locke's orders, which is a perfect state. Looking at the message from Locke, Miss 60 stuck out her tongue and looked cute. Hey, it's okay to catch fish at work, young master, I'm also carrying out my mission seriously. By the way, isn't this one more beautiful? With that said, sent a salty and wet photo to the group. Love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B. At 60, you little fool, you don't forget to hook up with the young master during work hours, it's too much. At Machinery Demon King, young master, I also have a picture here, you can see if it is more beautiful than the green tea 60. At this time, Miss 2B posted a more revealing photo in the group, and at Rocked. Lock, cute little Gongju 6. Angry.jpg, 2B make it clear, who is the green tea? Taking pictures is a technical job, not the more exposed the better, young master, if you look at this picture again, won't it look better? 60 said that the more exposed the better, but the new photos posted to the group were even more bold. Miss Leader 210. Sister 60, please be more serious during work hours. Don't post such irrelevant photos in the future, just let me post them. Beauty bathing pictures.jpg. Lock, lovely Xiaogong 60. You guys are going too far, do you want to start a battle of fighting pictures? Miss Ben has never lost in the attainment of taking pictures, you wait. After 60 said, he disappeared without a trace. Miss Neighbor 210. At 60 sister, is there an abnormal situation in your place? Why is there no movement? Do you need our assistance? Still no movement. Even Locke was curious, what did this girl suddenly run to do, is the network disconnected? It shouldn't be. The network built by Nines uses the private satellite star chain of the Rockefeller family, which has global coverage and can be received anywhere. But just when he was still curious, a brand new photo was sent to the group by 60. In the photo, Miss 60 is standing at the top of the towering building. Behind her is a round white moon as big as a disc. The 60 eyes with black silk masks are full of fighting intent, but the focus is not on her eyes. But on the upper body where she was hanging in neutral, half a disc was also revealed, which intersected with the bright moon behind her. Beautiful and sassy. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Lock, love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B, my second Olympics. Miss Leader 210. You cow, I'll take it. A2 who doesn't want to talk today. Commander of the Flaming Red Lips. Giggle, the group is really lively. Are you fighting pictures again? It's interesting. At this moment, A2 and the commander who had not spoken all the time also came out. Just after the commander sent a message, she immediately sent a voice to the group. Everyone was curious and clicked. All of a sudden. Cute little public lift 60. Love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B. Miss Leader 210. A2 who don't want to talk today. Commander Flaming Lips. A photo from the other side of the ocean, no matter how beautiful it is, can't reach the company that is close at hand, sisters, do you understand? Love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B, I just said why the young master keeps posting. The cute little public raised 60, sister commander, how can you do this? The photos I took with great difficulty are now emo hid by you. Miss Leader 210. Giggle, it's still the commander's sister who is very powerful, she can kill with one move, I admire it. A2 who doesn't want to talk today. The commander is right, what's the point of being in the air, isn't it good to face it? At cute little public lift 60, hurry up to complete the task, come back early. Lovely Xiaogongju 60. Thank you, sister A2, I understand, there is a special situation here, let's not talk about it. After leaving the chat group, 60 wore a black silk mask with a sweet smile on his face. It feels really good to have friends and family. Withdrawing the reconnaissance mechanical flying insect, 60 immediately adjusted his sight to Pete Parker's side. I saw that Pete Parker, who was reading quietly, suddenly became solemn. His spider telepathy sensed the approaching danger at first sight. Just then, a pumpkin bomb was thrown in from the window. The moment he saw the bomb, Pete Parker's body responded automatically, and he wanted to avoid it with a backflip. But the pumpkin bomb appeared too suddenly, and the power of the explosion was too great. Before he could dodge, he was enveloped in huge amounts of explosions, terrifying shockwaves hitting him in the face. The muscles on his face trembled, and his whole body slammed heavily against the wall. And the explosion of the pumpkin bomb also blew huge amounts of potholes out of the floor of his room. Below is his Aunt May's room. Do not. Peter Parker's face was full of horror as he looked at the floor that had been blown through. The first reaction was not to check his own injuries, but to leap towards Aunt May's room. He has lost his uncle, and he must never lose his only relative, Aunt May. But before he could rush to Aunt May's room, a green figure rushed in fiercely from the window and kicked him back. Pete Parker, I never thought that my best friend was the murderer of my father. Spider-Man, you really know how to pretend. Today I'm going to avenge my father, I'm going to kill you. It was none other than the second-generation Green Goblin. Hearing the familiar voice and looking at the familiar face, Pierre Parker's face was full of disbelief. He did not expect that his long-term friend would inherit his father's business and become a brand new Green Goblin. The information that was too explosive made him too late to react. At this moment, Harry's heavy punch hit him hard in the face, sending him flying out. The power is extremely amazing, completely surpassing his father, the Generation Green Goblin, Ruoman Osborn. No, I'm wrong. I'm not only going to kill you today, I'm also going to kill your only relative. Only in this way can you experience my pain. This is called empathy. Gia. Laughing wildly, Harry didn't continue attacking Pete Parker, but turned and walked towards Aunt May's room. The situation is dangerous. At this dangerous juncture, two white cobwebs shot out from the shattered ruins and stuck to Harry's body instantly. When the force came, Harry was pulled in front of him by Pete Parker, and his clenched fist was about to hit Harry's face heavily. But at a critical moment, he stopped again. The guy in front of him is his best friend. He must have misunderstood that he had killed his father, but it was not the case. Not only did he not do anything to his father, but he was stabbed in the abdomen by Ruoman Osborn, and there is still a small scar on his body. All of this is evidence. Harry must have misunderstood, must be. Pete Parker couldn't help thinking in his mind that he wanted to explain. As long as he explained it clearly, it would be fine. However, before he could speak, Harry's heavy punch struck again, knocking him out. Have you transformed? Gia, what if you transformed? No one can stop me today. Spider-Man, I want you to live rather than die, and I want you to pay the price. Harry said, and threw a pumpkin bomb directly at Aunt May's room. The power of the pumpkin bomb, Pete Parker has long tried. Even a body like his would be severely damaged by such a bomb, not to mention an elderly woman. Once the bomb hits his Aunt May, there is no doubt that his only relative will die. And such a result was something he could not accept no matter what. No. Looking at the pumpkin bomb that was about to fall into Aunt May's room, Pierre Parker's eyes turned red in vain. His eyes were full of red bloodshots, and he looked very terrifying. At this moment, his body was immediately covered by a layer of black fluid. It was the symbiote that parasitized him, and the symbiote Spider-Man came online. A black spider web flew out at high speed, hit the pumpkin bomb in an instant, and took the pumpkin bomb that was still in the air out of Aunt May's room. Boom! Huge amounts of explosions exploded outside the house, and Aunt May, who was hiding in the corner in fright at the moment, was not hurt. Looking at the completely different Spider-Man, Harry's face glowed with hatred. That's how you killed my father, Pete Parker, Harry said, looking at Pete viciously. Hearing this, Pete quickly explained. No, Harry, listen to my explanation, it's all a misunderstanding. I tried to save Mr. Ruoman, but he not only didn't appreciate it, but also stabbed me, and finally he died at his own hands. Although it was the mysterious man who killed Ruoman Osborn directly. But if he had to investigate the reason, Ruoman Osborn actually died under his own evil nature in the end. There is no doubt about that. And that mysterious man saved him, so naturally he couldn't sell him at this moment. His kindness would not allow himself to do this. Gia, so to speak, my father killed himself in front of you. Ridiculous. Do you think I will still believe your nonsense? Your only end today is death. Harry was furious and didn't believe Pete Parker at all. After saying that, he rushed towards Pete Parker again. Since Pete Parker has always been reluctant to admit it, just kill him directly. When he kills the dead Spider-Man and kills Aunt May slowly, his revenge plan will be accomplished. Rockefeller Manor. Locke sat quietly on the sofa in the living room with Erlang's legs crossed, looking at the commander's sister who was swinging in front of her, showing her beautiful dancing skills. In his hand there is a glass of bright red precious red wine Roman Conti, worth millions. There are dozens of bottles of such precious red wine in his wine cabinet. Even if he drank it every day, it was enough to support him for several months. The wine slid on the lips, and the beautiful woman swayed in front of her eyes. The so-called good life, but that's it. But at this moment Locke's eyes are not only focused on the commander in front of him. At the same time, he has been paying attention to the situation on Pete Parker's side. Under the surveillance of 60s reconnaissance mechanical flying insects, the situation on Pete Parker's side was being broadcast live in front of his eyes. It's all this time, and they haven't told the truth about me killing Green Goblin. Pete Parker, you are amazing. I admire your noble quality. That's it, I'll help you this time. Locke muttered to himself, and planned to give 60 the final order for this mission. But at this moment, he hesitated, and then a look of interest appeared on his face. At Pete Parker's home, Pete, who turned into the symbiote Spider-Man, is in an inextricable fight with the second-generation Green Goblin. At this time, a red figure was jumping down from the top of the building not far away, galloping towards Pete Parker. The same kind, the breath of the same kind, Gia Gia Gia. The hoarse voice came out of the red figure's mouth, gloomy, cold, and uncomfortable. This is not a normal sound, this is a sound that eats people. The red figure that suddenly appeared was none other than a massacre. Since the escape from prison, the massacre has been active on the bright side of New York in the past few days, blatantly creating one bloody incident after another, deliberately causing panic among the people. The sudden surge in strength made him look like a lunatic, unscrupulous, lawless, and his arrogant attitude was simply outrageous. Naturally, some people were very upset with him, and S.H.I.E.L.D. was the first to bear the brunt. For 2 days, SHIELD's Black Widow Natasha Romanoff and Captain America Rogers have been catching him. But in the face of the powerful slaughter, the strength of the two of them could not trap him at all. In 2 days, the massacre had escaped twice. Although he was hit hard, he did not give up. Today, they are still on the hunt. And this time, they couldn't fail again. Because every time they fail, more innocent people will die, which is not what they want to see. Inside a mobile car, Natasha Romanoff looked at the screen in front of him with a solemn expression. He's moving, fast, in the first 2 confrontations, although they failed to catch Cletus. But it was not for nothing. They left a micro-tracker on Cletus' body to facilitate the next positioning, and then set up traps for capture. If the fighting ability is not enough, they will make up for it with intelligence. This is their consistent style. After all, they are higher primates, not a bunch of intellectless trash. Although sometimes it is really wasteful, but they will not admit it. However, before they could set up the trap today, the opponent's super-fast movement speed had already alarmed them. What's the matter? It's getting late, it's time to go to bed. Rogers, who was beside him, looked at the time and said. The time shows 9 p.m. Natasha Romanoff. It seems that Rogers still has not adapted to this era. 9 o'clock in the evening is the most active moment in the modern society of feasting and feasting. Broken sleep. How is this possible? No time wasted on unimportant things. Natasha Romanoff didn't say a word, turned around and chased in the direction of the spot on the screen. Rockefeller Manor. Locke looked at the picture returned by the reconnaissance mechanical flying insect with a playful face. Looks like it's destined to be an unsettled night tonight. A slaughtered symbiote monster, and the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. are all here, interesting. Locke muttered to himself, his face full of interest. Since the invasion of Wakanda, his life has been quiet these days, and he is about to have a free time. These days, I'm either doing my homework, or on the way to do my homework, and my pen is about to be scrapped. It's rare to come across an interesting thing, but don't miss it. Creator, what do I need to do? 60 asked curiously. It's very simple, start the manual mode and let me play. Locke said with a smile. Yes, the manual mode is activated, the vision system is connected, and the connection is successful. The control of the body is handed over to the creator, and the connection is successful. Manual mode is turned on. Hearing Locke's order, Miss 60 immediately turned on the manual control mode without the slightest hesitation. Manual control and autonomous action are standard modes for all robots built by Locke. He vaguely remembered that the last time he was manually controlled was Miss 2B. And Miss 2B is the one who loves to be completely dominated by him. In her own words, this kind of thing that doesn't need to move at all and can be cool is really not too good. If possible, he hopes to never stop. Definitely, is the feeling of Miss 2B. I don't know if Miss 60 of at the moment will like it. Guess it shouldn't be too annoying. After all, don't move. Locke thought with a smile. In the room, Locke took out the gamepad and adjusted it to first-person mode. That's all for tonight's entertainment. Pete Parker's house. A huge red monster suddenly appeared in front of Spider-Man and Green Goblin. This red figure that suddenly appeared was none other than Cletus, which was the so-called massacre. In the original timeline, Carnage was supposed to be a monster spawned by a subtype of venom. But here, Cletus was parasitized by the common body ahead of time. So naturally, he turned into a bloodthirsty monster in advance. Call yourself a slaughter. But from Locke's point of view, this massacre is not another massacre. But for Cletus, there was no problem at all. The name of slaughter does not depend on the symbiote, but on himself. He is bloodthirsty by nature. No matter if he merges with any common body, it will eventually become a bloodthirsty slaughter. Similar, do you need my help? Slaughter stood by the broken window with interest and looked at Pete Parker. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Watching the sudden carnage, Pete Parker's face was visibly frightened. Because of his spider telepathy, he felt a strong threat from the monster in front of him. This guy is not ordinary, a guy who is even scarier than the Harry in front of him. Hey, there is actually a human woman here. That's really embarrassing. Fragile creatures are not qualified to live in front of my eyes. Slaughter shifted his gaze to Aunt May downstairs, raised his hand and fired a symbiotic long knife towards Aunt May. No, Pete was startled and was about to save Aunt May, but was deliberately held back by Harry. Aunt May is in danger. But at this moment, a blonde beauty fell from the sky and easily blocked the attack. It's really disgusting to attack a woman who has no power to tie the chicken. This woman who suddenly appeared is not Miss 60, who else could it be? No, to be more precise, it was Locke who controlled Miss 60's body. Regarding the massacre, whether it was the massacre in the original timeline, or the symbiotic monster that had no bottom line and could kill ordinary human women, Locke was very disdainful of it. As soon as there is a little bit of power, there is no limit to the madness, and it is simply unknown. He also knew the storm that the massacre had stirred up in New York City these days. It's just that because someone from S.H.I.E.L.D. has already intervened to deal with it, he doesn't bother to pay attention. After all, the appearance of the massacre was not a major event, and since it was not a major event, there would be no points to obtain. With no benefits and no points, Locke really couldn't think of a reason to let him shoot. But now, there is. The second-generation Green Goblin fought Spider-Man, which was not a small event, and now the slaughter is involved again. He just happened to be able to solve it by the way, save the trouble. As for whether he could bring himself a little bit of points after killing the massacre, he didn't care. Anyway, I have already participated in the battle between the second-generation Green Goblin and Spider-Man, and the points are definitely indispensable. Slaughter is regarded as a free gift. With this thought in mind, Miss 60 looked at the massacre not far away with a playful gaze. Do you have any last words? Controlling Miss 60's body, Locke said in his own tone. Hearing 60's words, Slaying was stunned for a moment, and then burst out laughing. For him, what 60 said in front of him was the threat of ants to elephants, and he didn't know whether to live or die. Since integrating with the symbiote, he feels that his combat effectiveness is overwhelming. In this world, he no longer needs to be afraid of anyone. This is also the reason why he dared to openly commit one after another killing incident. After all, the strength is there, and this is his confidence. Where's the stupid woman, calling me, are you impatient? Slay sneered, and with a big wave, both hands turned into two long scythes and slashed towards 60's body at high speed. Facing Massacre's attack, 60 didn't even bother to move his body, and he didn't even want to hide, so he just walked towards Massacre. In an instant, the slaughtering sharp sickle was close to this foot, and then, heavily slashed on 60's body. There was a mad sneer in the eyes of the slaughter. He seemed to have seen the miserable appearance of the woman in front of him being cut off by him. But, in the next second, the smile disappeared, and turned to be puzzled and unbelievable. because his sharp long knife had clearly cut the woman's body as he wished. However, the cut in the middle that he imagined did not appear. On the contrary, the woman looked at him with a playful expression, as if looking at a fool, unscathed. Is this what you call an attack? It's really weak. 60 sneered, full of disdain. You wanna die. How has Cletus ever suffered such humiliation? In his various experiences, he was the only one who mocked others, humiliated others, and crushed others. When did you get to the point where others humiliated you? Unforgivable. Kill, must kill. The long knives of the symbiotic body that the two hands turned into afterimages of afterimages constantly attacking the woman in front of them. But how can 60, whose body contains vibranium and adamantium particles, be hurt by this level of attack? Between sneers, he took a light step. Do you think that only you can conjure knives? In fact, I will. After all, 60's right palm suddenly changed, instantly turning into a long knife. Then, seemingly unremarkable, he swung the long sword towards the body, which was slashed at extreme speed. The cold light burst out, turning into a strand of silver thread, like the starlight piercing the night, flashing from the body of the long knife. Withdrawing the knife, slowly withdrew the steps just taken. The indifferent smile on 60's face has not disappeared. Only a ding sound was heard. It was the sound of metal material breaking. At the same time, several people around were shocked to see that the incomparably sharp symbiote long knife was broken into two pieces. It broke off and quickly rotated in midair, and finally slammed into the ground with a bang. With the fall of the symbiotic long knife, along with it, there is the arrogance of slaughter. Gradually, the disbelief on his face began to slowly change to panic. But 60, no, it should be said that it is Locke, and does not intend to give him time to continue to panic. In his view, this is not necessary. He didn't want the others' fear. Rather, die. After thinking about this, 60 disappeared in an instant. The cold light reappeared, silvery white as silk, gently crossing the slaughter's neck. It was not until 60's body appeared not far behind Massacre that a bloodshot appeared on Massacre's neck. Then the blood erupted like a fountain. A huge head rolled the ball to the ground. With wide eyes that can't be believed, Jong-hyun seems to be telling the world about his fear before his death. The red body twisted wildly on Cletus' body, as if trying to reconnect his head. However, this is obviously impossible. The brain is the most important place in the human body, and it is the central control place. Although the self-healing ability of the common body is extremely against the sky, it is impossible to bring the dead back to life. Before he could reconnect Cletus' head, a scorching flame erupted from the anti-gravity assistance robot suspended beside Miss 60. Immediately, all the slag that was burned by the Massacre's body was left. The total body is afraid of flames and special sonic attacks, which is a huge weakness. It is also the main reason why Locke has always looked down on the common body. Definitely, after the symbiote and the host are combined, they can still resist for a while. But once they are separated from the host and become what the symbiote looks like, then the high-temperature flame can completely kill them quickly. Simply not too simple. Seeing such a scene, both the second-generation Green Goblin and Spider-Man were stunned, and they even forgot to continue the fight. Especially the symbiote parasitic on Spider-Man. After seeing his powerful kind being wiped out by 60 in an instant, he was almost scared to death. The black symbiote that originally covered Pete Parker quickly retreated into Pete Parker's body, trembling, and didn't dare to come out at all. In an instant, the slaughter was slaughtered, and another symbiote was frightened and directly retreated from the host's body. Pete Parker would never have believed such a thing if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes. He clearly sensed how terrifying the red monster just now was. Even if he combined himself with the symbiote, it would be difficult for him to be his opponent. But now such a terrifying guy was so easily killed in seconds. Even the common body on his body hid in fear and did not dare to show his face again. This is simply incredible. Old man, are you all right? 60 turned around and looked at Aunt May with a smile, but Aunt May rolled her eyes and fainted. Aunt May. Seeing the fainted Aunt May, the Spider-Man who changed back to Pete Parker came to Aunt May with a single stride, then hugged her in horror. Don't worry, she's fine, but she's just too frightened and fainted. 60 said calmly, dispelling Pete Parker's worries. Thank you. After hearing 60's words, Pete Parker really relaxed a lot. Aunt May is his last relative, and he can't let her be hurt no matter what. If this woman hadn't appeared today, his only relative would have been in a bad way. So for 60's thanks, he is from the heart, is really grateful. He smiled and did not reply, but turned his attention to the second-generation Green Goblin. Suddenly, a curious look appeared on 60's face. It should be said that Locke's face showed curiosity. Your body strengthening is good, but this should not be the effect that your father's physical strengthening agent can achieve. It seems that you are not taking a physical strength strengthening agent. What is that? 60 seemed to be muttering to himself, but also questioning the second-generation Green Goblin Harry. In Locke's mind, Harry wanted to kill Spider-Man for revenge after learning of his father's death. As an ordinary person, it was impossible for him to do it, so after reading the previous projects of the Osborn group, he found out that his father had been obsessed with the physical fitness enhancement plan. As a result, he learned about the existence of physical strength enhancers, and injected it into his body without hesitation, thus turning himself into a second-generation Green Goblin like his father. But as mentioned earlier, it is to become a second-generation Green Goblin like Ruoman Osborn, not to surpass Green Goblin too much. After all, the effect of the physical strength enhancer is there, and it is absolutely impossible for Harry to turn into the muscular horned dragon in front of him, and the strength is strong enough to fight against Spider-Man. In this way, there is only one explanation, and that is that what Harry injected is probably not a physical strength enhancer, but another kind of medicine. But in his impression, at this moment Qian Lihao, Harry had no way to seek other ways to become stronger. This means that there must be other people involved behind Hall I. Is this a random coincidence, or a premeditated plan? The corners of Locke's mouth turned up slightly, revealing a hint of interest. He was interested in what happened to Harry. Since you are interested, you need to go into the depth of understanding. So, save your life for now. It can be regarded as a face to little Spider-Man. Locke thought so. Do you want to be my enemy? Without answering 60's question, Harry looked at 60 not far away with a solemn expression. That woman was a big threat, and that was his first reaction. However, the revenge for killing his father is undeniable. Spider-Man must die. So no matter who is in front of him, he can't stop him. Even if he dies, he will drag Spider-Man on his back. This is the truest thought in Harry's heart at the moment. Although he is extremely afraid of 60, he is willing to pay the price of his life and complete his revenge plan. I have to say, this determination, this perseverance is admirable. However, in Locke's view, it is a bit ridiculous. After all, any determination that has no strength as a foundation is just a bubble, and it will burst when you touch it. I should be asking you this sentence: do you want to be my enemy? Asked with a playful look at Harry, who was not far away. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.